if you want to stay, sure. You can stay for as much of the meeting as you're interested in. So we have a great guest speaker. I'm excited to hear from River Junction Arts Council. We're gonna table that quickly and do the reports and hear on what we think is the item of most people's interest, the streets project. So for public comment, if your item is on the agenda, we will have a public hearing on the adoption of the nuisance ordinance, which is some edits to our current nuisance ordinance, as well as the 2025 street and utility improvement public hearing. So if you have comments related to that, please save your comment for that time so that it's recorded as a part of the public hearing. Otherwise, if you have anything you want to share with council, just join us at the microphone so we can see and hear you. If you're having trouble getting out of your seat, just stand up and we can probably do okay. So just state your name and residence for the record and share anything you'd like to share with council. And if you could keep your comments to about 2 minutes so that everyone gets a chance to speak. Any public comment unrelated to agenda items? A little louder. Better. Is that better? Better. That's on me. Yep. Any public comment related to items that are not on the agenda, just general public comment for council.
Bill has one comment on Airbnb.
Sure.
So that.
And that's all.
Notice.
That's not the agenda. Do you want to share that now?
It's agenda.
It's not a public hearing, so you can make comment now if you like. Oh, yeah. We just like to keep the comments related to the hearing recorded with the hearing, so you're welcome. I go.
Hi, Bill K, 224 3rd Street. There were two things I wanted to mention. One was regarding the Airbnbs. And I agreed with the concept of limiting them. And one of my thoughts was possibly to limit them. Let me slow down. Housing is a concern in Wabasha, right? We have issue with housing. We want to sell some lots, try to increase affordable housing. Along those lines, I think if we're going to have Airbnbs, we should limit them. And we might want to create a balance between affordable housing and percentage of Airbnbs. Just a concept that if we have 3,455 homes, we can pick a percentage and say 1% can be Airbnb or 0.5%. And try to set the numbers based on housing.
Thanks for that comment. We will talk about this later. It's not a hearing, but if you want to stick around for that discussion, you're welcome to. And thanks for your comment.
Okay, thanks.
Anything further?
So any other comments related to the Airbnb item, you can speak now.
And we'll discuss that later. It's just not a public hearing at that time. All right, we had great comments in the last June meeting, so we appreciate that. All right, hearing nothing further, any changes or additions to the agenda? Anybody want any added items?
One of the people for the FEMA thing is here, so if we can move that up with the streets and stuff sooner, that would be good.
And I wanted to pull junkyard ordinance and discuss that along with police ordinance.
Junkyard ordinance with this ordinance. So that's currently consent 8-7. Okay. So any further changes from council or staff? I think we'll reorder it as streets discussion, the FEMA item, then we'll hear from Paul as our guest presenter. Thank you for being patient with us, Paul. And we'll just do things in order. Any other changes to the consent aside from Caroline's request to take the junkyard ordinance and combine it with the public nuisance ordinance conversation? All right, hearing none. We'll do the committee report. Streets was today, Tony.
Good evening, everyone. Street Commission met this morning for 8:30. Was a pretty light agenda. We had 15-minute parking request by Pembroke Avenue Coffee Shop, and we had a 15-minute parking request by the License Bureau place. We talked about both of them, and since I don't know why, if it was missed or what, but the 15-minute parking spot that was identified in the License Bureau wasn't put back in the street project. So they felt that we're gonna put that back, and hopefully that'll fill the need for that block. And then we talked about engine replacement in the squad. For Joe's squad, Public Works would pay for that out of the maintenance account, our maintenance account, and then we would get the truck to use in 2026 after. Otherwise, you get traded in and probably get $1,500 for it. Park board. We talked about future park plan, getting swings in at Ruger Park. We know it's gonna be pretty full up there with volleyball courts, but we were gonna take a look at that. And we just gave them a brief update on park projects around town. Nothing big to know. That's it.
Thank you much. Utilities.
We discussed the utility improvement, which we'll have a hearing on, and also the, what's the other thing here? Oh, the California overland, which we'll discuss later too. So that, nothing else.
Port Authority.
Further discussion with respect to the DNR mitigation and our barge terminal. Working through that, we discussed some engineering with respect to the barge terminal as well. More applications for grants and some success with those. And that's about it. The rest, Caroline, is. Yeah.
Planning.
We had a public hearing to talk about junkyard and outdoor storage, which I think is on the agenda as well. Then we had a lengthy discussion on the nuisance ordinance or some of the changes to that. So again, we'll discuss that today. So.
Joe.
Anything from fire or? Ryan's not here. Anything from fire we want us to be aware of?
Not really, I guess I just wanna give a quick update on where we're at with that, it's been nonstop. This year, so we're up to run, which we've topped out 125 last year, and they've been. Fire calls themselves, the rescues, we've been on the water 8 times already. And so just kind of want to give you a heads up on where we're at with that stuff, and received a $10,000 training grant we applied for. Me and Jesse Bowl, the training officer, and we received that $10,000 grant. Applied for a couple more grants for turnout gear, and we're kind of waiting to see where that's at, so that's kind of where we're at right now, so it's a heads up.
All right, thanks, Darren.
Yeah.
All right, any updates from council? All right, we'll hear from Caroline for the administrative report.
Okay, I attended the League of Minnesota Cities Conference, just learned a lot of good best practices and learning from other communities. W&B Financial has announced that they, will provide an additional $75,000 for the athletic field for new projects. Staff is gotten pricing for pickleball lighting, some turf, additional fencing, an automatic sprinkler, and we also received suggestions on an AED and a basketball court, but as pricing is coming in, it looks like we'll just have funds available for those initial items. So we'll try to draft a preliminary email to WMD Financial and take all those items through council for our procurement policy. We listed the Cannon Park lot for sale, and I've received 2 inquiries so far. We received a $10,000 grant to support digging to look at contamination at the old athletic field for preparation for the highway project. We have found some areas of debris, but also areas that are clean, so that'll help determine where the future roadway is gonna go. And another note for the next meeting, but just to start thinking about, we were approached by Three Rivers about the replacement of their bus. In 2018, the city provided a match on a new bus for Three Rivers, and that was $16,000. And the local municipality has to provide the matching funds on the bus. And so now we're being asked to budget for $6,000 per year for 5 years to continue transit services in Wabasha. So we'll put that on the next agenda for a presentation for them about user ridership, and then a further discussion if we are willing to do the match, so.
I'm on that advisory board, as is Mike Wabi, if anybody wants any further information about that. It was kind of a surprise to us to learn about this, but I guess it shouldn't have been. They basically haven't been able to access new buses since before COVID. And through that period of time, they've gone from being $70,000 vehicles to like $239,000 vehicles. So they have thought about a pilot van option for Wabasha based on the ridership in our community. And it sounds like that's very much on the table, so that'll be part of our August discussion. But if you have any insight into ridership, I would appreciate that. Being on that advisory committee, not being a part of the sort of social services part of our community, I don't have a lot of insight to share. So if you do, feed it through me. If you hear things that are working, we want to be able to voice that. But the cost share piece, because it predates Caroline and I, we understood this to be a conversation about how can we improve services in your community, and it was actually how can we get a memorandum of understanding in front of your council. So we told them we need a little more time to get that ready. So they're gonna make some recommendations, and then are they gonna present in August?
Hopefully in August, we'll put that on the agenda.
And then just since there's so many members of the public convened, this Cannon Park language that we use, it's not Cannon Park. It's the parcel on Hiawatha and Milligan, and it's not the park that you think of as Cannon Park with the cannon in it. It is the grassy area that's the corner lot on Milligan and Hiawatha that's being marketed for housing. All right. Thank you, Caroline. Then we have the consent agenda absent the item that, 8.7, we have the regular city council minutes from 6.3, the special city council minutes from 6.9. A contract for the police service with Kellogg, some peddlers permits. July warrants, the state of Minnesota joint powers agreement. The CBA, the first take that one out, Wabasha Fire Department front concrete apron replacement. The engine replacement in Wabasha Police Department squad transfer to Public Works, as Tony described. The pay classification change for our EMT trained paramedic. And the resolution accepting grant navigator funding from the League of Minnesota Cities. Do we have a motion to approve these then?
Second.
We have a first from Tim, we have a second from Brian. Any further discussions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. All right, now we're gonna pull the street project up first. We think that's where 90% of you would like to either have questions and ask or want to have the presentation made. Do you want to tee this up? Oh, Brian. Brian's gonna do it. Brian's our city engineer. Thanks for being here, Brian.
Hello, good to see everybody.
Too.
I have a bit of a presentation I'll go through.
Great.
To kind of describe the project and hopefully answer some of the questions folks have. And then, happy to take questions after that.
Brian's just speaking in the microphone, Brian, hopefully that's fine, and then,
Just a little better.
this thing just needs to go a little closer.
It's louder when you have it up.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So, if you move to the next slide here, this is the 2025 street and utility improvement project. The project itself, consists really of, 3 different types of work. There's a mill and overlay, project, that includes several streets. There's a couple of streets that we're doing what we call our reclaim and pave, which is a little bit of a step up above a mill and overlay. And then there's one section of the street where we're doing a full reconstruct. So, sewer and water utilities being reconstructed along with the street. So the mill and overlay streets include 4th Street West, 3rd Street West. There's the alley that runs between Lawrence Boulevard and East Main Street, kind of at an angle. Washington Avenue, a portion of 11th Street East. The 2 reclaim and pave sections would be Buena Vista Drive and Skyline Drive. The section that's targeted for full reconstruction is Market Street. I will note that the preliminary engineering report or feasibility report that council reviewed and approved previously had 3 additional streets in the mill and overlay category. There was a section of 4th Grant Boulevard, Prospect Avenue, and Bailey Avenue. Just based on budget discussions with staff, it was determined that those sections of street should be pulled project within an acceptable budget, which is around $1.9 million. Those streets will be looked at in the future for improvements. They're in a little better condition and can afford to wait a few years for improvements. So the next few slides just show some photos of the existing street condition. You get Skyline Drive here, and then the next one is 4th Street West, west of Maiden Avenue. We've got the alley between Lawrence Boulevard and East Main Street there, showing some of the deterioration. Then 11th Street East, and then that block between Milligan and Pierce Avenue. Next, the intersection of Market Street East and Washington Avenue. This is the section that's targeted for full reconstruction. Then another couple of shots of Market Street on the next couple of slides. So as far as the existing conditions, I want to talk about, first go through what the existing conditions are on the sections that are targeted for mill and overlay or reclaim. Storm sewer in these areas mostly consists of surface drainage along either bituminous curb lines or ditches, and they typically flow to storm sewer or adjacent streets. So there's drainage that exists along the existing street sections. Sanitary sewer, there is sewer that exists under some of these streets. It ranges from some vitrified clay pipe that ranges from about 50 to over 100 years old. There is some newer PVC pipe along 4th Street. There's a relatively newer PVC pressure sewer up on Skyline Drive. Most of the services are either clay or cast iron services in the clay pipe areas. And then the PVC pressure services up on Skyline Drive, and then along 4th Street, PVC pipe exists. So That's the condition of the existing sanitary sewer. Water main is, cast iron pipe for the most part, between 4 and 8 inch diameter. With the exception, I didn't notice on the slide here, but there's some PVC or ductile iron water main, up on Skyline Drive. The age of the water main ranges from 50 to 100 years old. And these, utility ages are consistent with the utility ages that you've seen on some of your prior mill and overlay projects. And we just noted to make you aware that you're making some improvements on top of some pretty old utilities, and there's some risks associated with that, and just want you to be aware of that. Storm sewer, wise, I'm now talking about Market Street. So storm sewer, there's some existing surface drainage that kind of drains down to the intersection where it goes into some catch basins. And that red area circled there is kind of a low area within the woods that's serving as a bit of an infiltration area right now, but it isn't very well defined. And it's wooded and it's kind of full of debris, and it's not really something that Public Works is able to maintain or monitor right now in its current condition. Sanitary sewer pipe along Market Street is that old clay pipe. It's about 75 years old. We just know that that old clay pipe is a source of infiltration and flow into your system, which you don't want. You don't want clean water into your sewer pipe. And the services are either clay or cast iron, similar to what we've seen on other projects. Water main is a 4-inch cast iron pipe, maybe some ductile iron in there. But it's relatively old, 95 to 100 years old. So it's done its job for many years. Services are likely
Sorry,
3/4 inch.
Share your presentation with our online viewers and colleagues.
Oh, sure.
Okay. All right.
The services are likely 3/4 inch, and they're either galvanized, presumed lead, or copper pipe. We don't know for sure. We've got some data from the lead service line inventory that we've done, but we'll identify those as we build the project. You really can't tell until you dig them up. Proposed improvements, or there's the utility map, yeah, so this is showing where the existing utilities are, if you're interested in that. So some water main along the kind of the northwest side of the road, sewers kind of generally down the center, and see the storm sewer down there.
Right, any of those utility or sewer line, are those steel from previous, steel, program?
Are they, say that again?
You know, we filled a lot of those.
Oh, line?
Yeah,
No,
I mean,
no, none of these are line. You have a bunch of line in town, but these weren't. So talking about proposed improvements, first talking about the mill and overlay areas and the reclaim and pave areas. The mill and overlays will be generally what you've seen in the past. We've done several projects over the last 10, 15 years, mill and overlay projects. Some of these streets have asphalt curb, some don't. We'll basically be milling off the top surface, putting a new 2 inches of asphalt on, new asphalt curb where that exists. And that's pretty simple. The reclaim and pave sections along, what's it again? Skyline Drive and Buena Vista Drive. That's just a little bit different. Instead of just milling off the top surface, they'll bring in a reclaim machine and they'll grind up the asphalt and the gravel that's underneath to create a new gravel base that's mixed asphalt and gravel. Makes a good base for a new street. We'll put 4 inches of new asphalt on top of that. So that's the difference between the mill and overlay and the reclaim and pave. And the reason we do that on some streets and not others is these two streets are in, the asphalt's in a poor enough condition that it really wouldn't hold up with only a 2-inch overlay on the top. So we do a little bit more extensive rehab on those streets that are a little bit worse condition. We might do some spot repairs if we find some soft spots in the road, full depth patch, and then if there are areas with concrete curb that's deteriorated, we'll do some spot replacement of the curb. The expected life of the what are we on here? Storm drainage. Go back up. Yeah, expected life of the improvements on the mill and overlay is typically 10 to 15 years. You're blessed with some very sandy soils for the most part in Wabasha, so with good maintenance, you can get 20 to 25 years out of those mill and overlays. We do want to note with the mill and overlays, you will get cracks that will come through. Any cracks that are in the existing asphalt will reflect through, so it isn't a failure of the project if cracks come through. That's just to be expected with a mill and overlay project. You'll also see it, I probably noted later here, but we'll talk about that, the bird baths. Reclaim and pave is 20 to 25 years for sure with proper maintenance, potentially longer. The storm drainage, there are no storm sewer pipe or really improvements proposed as part of the mill and overlay. As part of the reclaim and pave up on Skyline, we'll be looking at replacing some culverts up there. We'll make some casting adjustments for the manhole covers that are in the streets to adjust those to the new grades. I like to talk about bird baths on mill and overlays. Really, we can't change the grade of the surface on the mill and overlay. So if they're bird baths now, they're likely to be bird baths in the future. They might change location, they might change size, but you're likely gonna have some bird baths in mill and overlay street sections if they exist now. We really can't change that, so we're not changing the grade of the street. On the reclaim and pave sections, you should see some improvement in that because we can control the grade of the street. Sanitary sewer improvements on the mill and overlay, really no improvements there other than adjusting and correcting manhole castings and bringing those up to snuff. Water main, no improvements proposed for the water main aside from valve adjustments, so valve boxes in the street. If we did include those water main improvements, it'd be a full reconstruction because you'd be tearing up the whole street. But we do want to note, as we've noted before, given the age of the water main and it's cast iron, we've had water main breaks in the past. A lot of times that's a service connection, so there's always the possibility you put a brand new asphalt surface on, and the next summer you get a water main break, you gotta dig up the street. So that's just the risk you take with those mill and overlay streets. Market Street proposed improvements, it's a full reconstruction, so dig up everything just like the downtown project, replace the aggregate base, new asphalt, new curb and gutter. No sidewalk being proposed as a part of this project. Any of those driveway aprons that are impacted will be replaced with a concrete apron, and then if there's an asphalt driveway behind that, it'll be patched in with asphalt. If it's concrete, it'll be patched in with concrete. We are looking at trying to improve the geometry of that intersection. If you are familiar with that, it's just a huge intersection and it's kind of hard to tell, you know, where the one street ends and another begins. So you can see in the drawing there, we're trying to correct that in that northwest corner. I gotta pull that in, make it a little more clear where the four streets come together, that it is really four streets at an intersection. You did run some turning movements for vehicles on there. They'll be able to make their turns just fine. So that should reduce a little bit of the area that Tony has to plow and maintain in the future, so. Storm sewer will be putting in new storm sewer pipe catch basins, and then we're gonna clear that area that's wooded and do some excavation and better define it as an infiltration basin that's intended to deal with stormwater. So city staff can monitor that, maintain it, keep it clear, and those types of things, so. You'll see some loss of trees there, but it's really better to find that area that's serving a stormwater purpose right now. Yeah, and then sanitary sewer, we'd be replacing basically all pipes and service systems and manholes. Same thing, pipes, services, hydrants, valves. We are stubbing in a couple services. I think it's 2 services in that lot that's where we vacated the right of way to make room for a buildable lot there along Main Street, and that was at the southwest corner, I think, of the intersection along Main Street. So there's really no sewer stubs there because they wouldn't be in the right location. Project costs. Next slide. Oh, just.
The one we don't want to.
Yeah.
Okay,
Everybody is zoning out till this.
we're stuck.
You're stuck. assessments. We've got two different assessment calculations here, one for the mill overlay reclaim project. If you can go to the next slide.
Sorry.
It's stuck again.
Thank, yeah.
So you have an assessment policy, under that policy, mill overlays a class C improvement. It basically says those improvements should be assessed 20% of the benefiting properties on a per unit basis, an equivalent residential unit. And there's a process for calculating that. When we do run that calculation, we end up with estimated assessments, preliminary assessments for the mill and overlay reclaim project of about $1,800
Okay, now-
per next slide, yeah, per ERU. The individual assessment ranges on the preliminary assessment roll are anywhere from that single unit 1,800 up to about 38,000. That's a larger property. This basically the golf course property up on Skyline Drive, because they equate to several ERUs in your policy, the way that's calculated. So that's the largest assessment. The average is about 1,854. So it's really just that one. These are similar ERU assessments to your past projects from 2014, 16, 19, and last year, when we take into account inflation, there was $100 of the assessment from last year. And then there are some properties that would receive a $0 assessment, because they were assessed on a part of the 2012 project. Your policy says there, it can't be assessed within 15 years. The Market Street, a little bit different type of improvement. Class B, calculated similarly, though 20% of the project costs to the benefiting properties. When we run those calculations here, we end up with some larger assessments. You can go to the next slide there. So you can see we have assessments for street, and we have an assessment for water, an assessment for sanitary. So depending on, everybody gets a street assessment, but depending on whether you have water or sewer service would dictate whether you get an assessment for that. You can see the numbers there, 7,000 for street, 4,000 for water, 7,000 for sanitary. That equates to about $15,000 total. Might be a typo on the sanitary there, but I know the total is right at 50,000, because I don't think those numbers are the same. But it is a total of 15,000 if you have all three of those. If you compare that to the downtown project, if you had all three sewer, water, and street assessments, we were down at $9,000. So it's significantly higher. Why is that? It's because there are very few properties on this stretch of street. We got an intersection. Intersections are usually expensive, and you've got very few properties to spread that assessment across. So one thing you might want to look at tonight, if you authorize the project with the resolution, not be approving the assessments. Assessments would be recalculated once the bids come in, and you would have the option of reducing those assessments if you chose to do so. Your policy is a guide. Ultimately, you can decide, council can decide what those assessments should be.
I think we ran into that problem in 2013 too. I don't think we lowered the assessment, those property owners.
Yeah, I'd have to look back and see. I think this is still higher than what those were, taking into account inflation, but we can check on that deed.
I would like to know.
Yeah, we can get that information for you prior to the assessment process starting. And again, there are some properties here that would not be assessed because of they were assessed on the 2013 project. So project schedule wise, you're probably not going to be able to see that very good at all. It's a chart on well, actually you can't.
I can zoom in. There we go.
So there are a lot of steps you have to go through with the assessment process here. Basically tonight, we're here at that July 1st date. I should apologize, I should have started with this. We'd intended to have a neighborhood open house before this meeting, 5 o'clock, to help answer some of the questions before the hearing. When we sent out all the notices for the assessment hearing, my fault, we just forgot to notice the neighborhood improvement at 5 o'clock. Which wouldn't have been a problem, because it would have been a meeting nobody knew about, except for the fact that I put it in the summary in the council packet and a couple people saw it. So we did have a couple people show up at 5 o'clock.
So you had a small neighborhood meeting.
My apologies to that. I did get contact information from one person. I'll follow up with them. If anybody else showed up at 5 o'clock, my sincere apologies for that. So we did not have the open house meeting, but we do have the improvement hearing tonight, which is what we're in right now. Your action tonight, if you choose to order the improvement, move forward, would be to adopt that resolution, order the improvement.
No, no, the connecting
no,
slots,
no.
okay. Do you have the rest of this memorized?
Yeah, so. We're also recommending that the contractors that will bid on the mill overlay project are different than the contractor that will bid or at least prime the construction project. So we think it's advantageous to split that into 2 contracts. So you don't pay a general contractor for markup on a sub who's doing most of the work. The other reason is that we don't want to start the Market Street project this year because it's unlikely it would get finished by fall, and we don't want to open up the street reconstruction project and let it sit over winter unfinished. So the intent was always to start Market Street next spring, and so if we split that into 2 bids, it just kind of fits so that you'd be bidding a project in a more normal time frame for a next year's project. If you bid it now, contractors don't always know what their schedule will be next spring, so we have a separate schedule for that, kind of split up. The mill and overlay project, we want to take bids on July 30th here, come back to you in August, at your August meeting to award a contract. And then we would bid the Market Street reconstruction in either November or December, or December or January, and then come back with a construction contract award recommendation either January or February, with our construction in May, and then finish construction in July. The assessment process, we would wait until we have the Market Street bids in hand, and then calculate the final assessment roll. Have the assessment hearing where we would have that information for you, Dean, probably beforehand, and you could make some decisions on the Market Street assessment amounts. If you chose to do something different there, the numbers would be different anyway, because they would be based on bids. So recommendation wise, if you choose to move forward with the project, you need to adopt the resolution ordering the improvements. And then for the mill and overlay project, at least adopt the resolution approving plans and specs and authorizing the advertisement for bids, so we can take bids on July 30th and get going on that portion of the project. That's the information I have. I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you.
Or you'd like to handle it.
Yeah, so go ahead.
The alleyway between Orange Boulevard and Main Street. I got one email about you know, just in that gravel and so forth. And about making it in and out on Main Street and eliminating Orange Boulevard side of it, and I agree with that, except for the gravel part. I think we need to look at that. The traffic does go through there very fast, of people that are not from the area, and they have no idea how narrow that place is. And I think we can utilize, or I think we can achieve that and still provide ambulance and fire service for that area too. So I have a letter, it's the package here that I wrote, making but just one, but throw it out there, and I knew a couple of people in the audience about that. So
We did get that, Dean, council member, and we did have some discussion, and Tony can speak on this too, but some of the issues with that, it is a public street, city does maintain it, so it would cause some difficulties with maintenance plowing if you have that closed off.
well, you would have
Lawrence Boulevard.
Lawrence Boulevard is so small. Let's say 3-inch curve or whatever, just. So people know that they can't pull in there, so that would take care of that plowing issue. And we have done this in the past. 4th Street East, we eliminated that old road. And it's one way now, or it's entry going only, and it's also only residential parking. So we have done stuff like that in the past to take care of these smaller problems.
Okay.
And I think this is one area that we've looked at in the past, we should look at that again and finally just do something about it. So, and only 4 homeowners really need to utilize that area, plus the city, 4 AM and fire. And so.
I guess it-
I guess, I'm not, I wasn't clear, Dean, are you, proposing this to be eliminated from the project, or?
No, that we do the project, but we do it right where we finally take care of this problem and, have it, and for, only exit only on Main Street and eliminate the Lawrence Boulevard aspect of it. And, yeah, fire and ambulance and calls can still get through, but if we just eliminate the exit on Lawrence Boulevard. Doctor shaking your head.
I don't understand the problem with that street. I walk it quite a bit. I don't understand the problem you're explaining.
When you live in Wabasha for 45 years, maybe you will, yeah. But, the problem is, people come down Main Street and they turn into that, they get into the roadway and, they come in awful fast. And,
I've
Kinda short
never
cut
seen,
off.
I've never seen
well,
anybody
just
cut
because you don't see it doesn't mean it doesn't happen.
Well,
So you're saying they come
I'm
from
telling
the
you.
east main side and they shortcut to
Right,
Lawrence Boulevard,
and I'm
not
telling you,
realizing.
it does happen.
Sure.
Take my word for it, or don't believe me, whatever you wanna do.
So, but for sure, we should blacktop it because we've got manhole cover and all that, so it's gotta be blacktop, so that part's kind of taken care of.
Yeah, there's sewer water in there, so.
So we gotta blacktop, we gotta maintain it in that respect, we gotta plow
Well,
it.
I'm just saying, now is the time to look at that, those options if we're gonna do something about it, so.
we'll just put a one-way sign up there.
You know how that works.
Well, like this.
So,
So
Yeah.
anything you would do, you'd have to think about the enforceability of it. And if you're willing to enforce it and doing something that would actually deter drivers from doing it, if it's, we've run into this before, and what you would need to do to really prevent people from going through there is some kind of physical barrier. You still get people that would do it. If you put a limited barrier that you can still theoretically.
or
drive
maybe
over.
a few times, but, once people realize that that's not a road. Just like the golf, when we put the bike paths in, cars were going down day and bike paths until they realized, hey, they're not bike paths.
Yeah,
Or they're not, road,
yeah.
so.
It could be done, we would just need direction before we did the project here on what the council wants to do. We can come up with something to accomplish that.
If you don't,
That's the council.
if the rest of the council doesn't agree with me, then at least put speed bumps at the entryway there, so. I know you guys don't like speed bumps, but other cities have them, they seem to be working, so.
They do, speed humps work a little better. Wise,
I like the
bumps, good. Cause maintenance issues.
I know.
So.
Any other questions for Brian from council for staff? Otherwise, we'll open the public hearing. We might get some questions in the public hearing. Brian said he's okay with that. People can just stay where they are, because half of you are kind of pinned in. Is that all right? All right, so we will open the
Can
public.
you just repeat the question into the microphones?
Yep.
Sure. Sure, feel free to turn to the public. We know what Brian's face looks like. So we'll open the public hearing at 6:40. And I welcome any questions or feedback related to this, this item, and questions, of course, are permitted, and, we'll give an answer to you. If Brian has an answer, it might be an answer that comes along with one of these next steps, in which case, follow along with the, kind of the project timeline, and we'll be willing to hear from you at any time.
If you didn't see already, and I didn't give you one, there's a copy of the presentation up here on the table. And there are copies of the preliminary assessment rolls for both Market Street and the mineral overlay reclaim sections of the project. So they do have the preliminary numbers for the property.
We have a question.
Yes, I see a hand.
Charlie.
Charlie.
Brian, can I ask you a few questions about Buena Vista?
Yes.
I probably should have spoke when they were having the public hearing, but anyway, first, Buena Vista is a road that goes up the hill. And so I know you know what the project is.
Yeah.
It varies in width from 13 feet to 17 feet as you go around. And so what your construction gonna do is, I would think it should at least be 16 feet all the way. I've asked Tony here to widen it out when he does repairs, but he never has. And, so anyway, your data in the construction thing doesn't say what it's going to do. For width. The second items I have relates to the cul-de-sac itself. And on the west side of the cul-de-sac, there is a paved gutter. And that paved gutter starts out at about 4 inches deep. Goes to 6 or 7 inches deep, and then rises up to the road surface level. And then the water that comes down off the hill with the gravel and stuff in it goes down to that gutter and then across the road, rather than dropping back down in the gutter and going through the culvert. Are you gonna make that kind of a correction?
Yeah, we'll try to correct as much of the drainage issues as we can, Charlie, as part of the project. As far as the road width goes, we hadn't planned on doing any widening to the road.
Yeah.
We planned on keeping it the same width.
And then the third item is, by on the, I'd say the north end of the cul-de-sac, the road goes up the hill and levels off. And that's really a driveway for the homes that are up there. And, the two sections of land that own on either side of that outside there, where it goes up, is Jeff Schollis and Jim Ramers. J. Ramer, not D. I was wondering if that was gonna be included in the paved area, because it should be.
It's hard to describe where the.
Considered as a curb cut.
Yeah, where the limits of the driveway are versus the road, but we do have a delineated line where that will,
Yeah.
where it's considered driveway and roadway. It's hard for me to show you that without a picture, but we do have that delineated.
Okay. Well, anyway, just wanted to know what was included, since I have to pay two of the.
Two assessments?
Instead of one, I thought at least they will get some answers on it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, I saw your hand next, like, I see you, Sharon. Did you have, okay, Commissioner Count?
I have a question for you, I think this is a very passionate community. The cost is gonna be 1.941. What's the expected return on investment for the community? How will this help the community?
So we don't do a calculated dollar return on investment, but the general theory behind mill and overlay projects is that you do this type of maintenance because over the life cycle of the project, we don't have specific dollars for this, but in general, we do pavement life cycle analysis. And it's proven that if you put mill and overlay, proper maintenance like seal coating, crack sealing, mill and overlay early in the midlife of the pavement, you will extend the pavement life longer before you have to actually reconstruct it. We've done some models that show that if you do this type of maintenance over the 50-year life of the roadway versus doing nothing until you have to reconstruct it, costs you more in the life cycle of the road.
So it'll save the community in the long run, is that correct?
Ultimately, it will save dollars on infrastructure maintenance and repair, replacement by the.
And this may be not possible, but, when we moved in, we hadn't even moved in, we did have our vitrified clay pipe first. So that cost for us was 16,000. Is there
Sure.
anything that, what?
Your service pipe, or the pipe that runs
The clay
across
pipe.
the street.
Yeah, sort of. Is there anything that can be done, because for the hours, if I'm paying, I wanna help the community with it, is there anything that can be done for these other people that have older pipes that we can take a look at, so that they don't have to experience it, or is it just, it is what it is?
So the homeowner owns the service pipe from the home.
We get that part,
So,
I wanna help other homeowners.
sure, on a reconstruction project like on Market Street and the downtown project, and the 2012 or 13 project, whatever you wanna call it down here. The city typically replaces the service pipes from the main to the right of way with new pipe. Past the right of way, it's the homeowner's responsibility to hire a plumber and do that replacement on their own. So when we do reconstruction projects, we do address the service pipe out to the property line or the right of way. And then the homeowner is responsible for it past that. Doing it outside of a reconstruction project isn't really feasible because you have to dig up the pavement and all those other types of things. So when we do reconstruct, we do address the services, but not when we do the normal overlay projects.
I have a question with that, so we had the same problem where our pipe broke, we've paid twice now for that pavement. And now we turn around now, here we go again,
Yeah.
we're gonna be paying again.
Yep. It's true.
And then we have different, we've already got the new pipe in, because we don't have the cast They have to take that all.
And you're on West Street?
Market.
Market Street, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
So we pay for it for the third time.
unfortunately, you do.
Sharon, I saw your hand next.
Um.
Sorry, I cannot see everybody, but I'm doing my best.
Charlie brought up the point business, so I had a question on that. So do you have that figure to go all the way with Charlie's residence? Or just to that turnaround?
Just for the turnaround, you delineate the turnaround where that is considered street, you wouldn't improve the driveways, you know that. It's hard to do it without a picture, but
So you consider, I know what you're talking about, also. So you're considering that it's just driveways past that, but anybody that has to get there is gonna pay.
Yes.
Lance.
I just barely heard, or thought I heard, there's an automatic 4% levy starting next year on the work that's being done this year, is that correct? And then,
Kellen, you wanna explain how the debt service works?
Yeah, to do the project, Lance, there's gonna be a portion, that'll be assessments. I think it's 20% to those homeowners, and then a little portion for the Market Street that'll be covered by utility. And then $1 million is the city is set to borrow through a general obligation bond. And the debt payment on that is about $95,000. So that added on to our tax levy next year, just from a starting point, equivalates to a 4% levy increase. It won't continue to go up, but an add on that new debt will be about a 4% increase on everybody's taxes citywide, just to start to take on the project.
and then any overages that are over and above that, the unforeseens, or?
There'll be contingency and our experience with Bolton and Mink historically on their project estimates versus bidding is very, very good to date. I mean, I'm not saying there couldn't be anything, but
We include contingencies in the preliminary estimates, we include some contingency items in the bid, actually. And then the city does include some contingency on the financing that they get, so there's some backstops and contingency to account for cost overruns, but Caroline's right, we haven't typically seen cost overruns on projects recently, so.
Last but not least, I've been paying tax for a year. Do we have a savings account that the city can draw from rather than borrow?
not for $1 million project like this.
We would typically bond for a big street project.
Yeah. We could, what we've done a little bit is try to break it apart and do, like $300,000 projects every couple of years. But there were definitely, Tony can speak to this, there's been gaps in that, so then we have a buildup of projects. So,
How long will it take to pay off the bond then?
15 years,
How many?
15 years.
5-0?
15, 1-5.
Okay.
Mr. Raymer, you've been patient.
How do you guys determine the 20% assessment for those property owners? When there's a lot of properties in town, they're used by a multitude of people. And University, which is not, but there's a lot of streets in town that are used extensively. Why should the homeowners be, where do you come up with the 20% and how do you justify it?
That's our policy, and we must speak to the origination of that thought. That's why it is limited to 20% versus more than that.
It used to be a
Well, but should it be a general tax levy for everybody and at the 20%? They're already paying taxes. There is no city street, I'm on a county road, but I've had my house for 42 years. I'm on a county road, I have no water, no sewer, that's on the city. And then you still gotta pay 20%.
With the assumed positive impact of your property value, basically.
Can't go off a bond without some kind of public improvement policy, and 20% is the lowest you can go. So if we're gonna borrow to do the project, we have to levy or assess the adjacent street owners, and I think we've done this now for half a dozen projects.
At least, yeah.
Yeah,
Since,
20%.
since 2000.
It's the least amount we
It's
can
the
do.
least amount we can do,
It's the least percentage that we can do
and bond.
and do an improvement bond for those improvements. So it's the minimum percentage that you can do under the law to do an improvement bond in the city. Most city policies are physically set even higher than that, 30-40% in some cases. We work for several cities that have Westfields, and most of them are actually down to this 20% range. And it's capped at that 20% because of that bonding authority requirement, 20% assessment required.
I believe it was back in 2000, we changed the policy. The policy was 100% property work. And, then it came down to 30%, and then it came down to minimum 20%. And everyone since then has paid their 20% every more.
But on
So,
that, on that
and you,
account,
we have some homeowners that, like you, that just have a road that has no really public come through it. But they still pay their share years
well, I'm
ago.
not saying
So,
they're sure.
So I
No
mean,
problem paying my
they
fair
never
share.
talk about, like you mentioned, or talk about, well, why don't we just put a fund and have the entire city pay for the project, like St. Charles does? Well, that was discussed, and for some reason it was not brought up, and it has never been, implemented. So,
But the bonding is a financial strategy.
Right.
People are urging Wabasha to roll. Well, it's just another instance of move to bird. Because you gotta pay 20%, if you know you have these blacktop, you know, in Wabasha. It's an expensive place to be and say, look. Well, if you go outside and say, well, it's your taxes, then it's actually less already. And you get all the amenities, the fire, ambulance, police. What's the benefit of living in Wabasha?
You get the street right up to your house, you know, you get the street right up to your business, so it's that student property benefit of actually that public.
But the interesting thing about his property is that he has no benefit, direct benefit to him. That's not his driveway. He has absolutely no benefit from that road for him personally. It's just the way it's laid out.
Sure, it happens to have a street there, yeah,
Kind of like the golf course,
right.
they typically don't use Skyline Drive anymore now that the clubhouse is. It's just the way it is.
Us.
So I was just looking at this, the papers here that they handed out and the, amount that each home will be basically assessed at. There's just, I guess there's 2 pages with the addresses listed twice. One's for approximately 2,400 and the other one is about 1,825 for residential. So I'm curious what the devil charge is there.
I apologize. Okay,
I haven't honestly looked at that closely because we're not there yet, but Brian's seeing
I was gonna
something.
mention that, so I should have talked about this, so these are 2 different versions of the assessment roll. The one that says 2,400 is what the assessment would have been if we hadn't taken those 4 streets out of the project. So that one was in, that's what was in the feasibility report, we had the other 4 streets in it.
Right.
The lower amount is what the assessment is when we took those streets out. I probably shouldn't have included both, but I did wanna make that point.
Just
Forgot to make-
because it was supposed to, I think they had on their project be done like a year, 2 years ago. And then it got pushed back, so.
It doesn't,
I get maybe some confusion, so I guess what assessment are we gonna be looking at?
1,800 is the
Okay.
preliminary assessment.
Okay.
It would have been
Sorry,
higher.
We have to do a feasibility assessment as a part of our due process, so that's just an artifact, sorry about that.
No, that's okay, I just want to clarify, that's all.
I probably didn't do it, that was confusing.
Yeah, Jackie.
So I guess one of my big hangups is there's a lot of conflicting language in the documentation that's been distributed. I mean, in your executive summary, it demarcates that only Market Street is gonna have full replacement and reconstruction of bituminous pavement. Sentence right after it says the other segments in this report each are proposed for a bituminous mill and overlay for replacement of, bituminous curb, spot repair. So right there, that is incorrect language compared to the presentation you just presented, and that's in this executive summary, which, as far as I know, is the only document that's been available to the public. And so that's contrary to that, and
I mean, you stated that you have reclamation for Skyline, so I think it needs to be more clearly, because you keep grouping these streets together, even in the resolution that you're intending to resolve tonight, all those streets are grouped together, and it's very confusing language, because you put bituminous mill and overlay in the same sentence as bituminous reclamation, and so nobody knows what's happening on any of these streets. In the maps you present, in the feasibility study, all the streets say mill and overlay on them, on that map, that's colored in the feasibility report. The reason we do that is the assessment process is the same for that category of streets, whether it's mill and overlay or reclamation. They're the same category of maintenance improvement in the policy, so the assessment is the same. I realize it's confusing, I apologize, but this right here on that screen is what's actually happening to those streets. No, but it's not in the resolution that they're looking to resolve tonight. It's not demarcated like that. If that should be the resolution, it should have those three categories. It only has two categories. Like that because of the assessment policy. And all the assessments are calculated. So I apologize, it's confusing with that. But for the resolution, you can go mill and overlay Skyline and no one's gonna be able to hold you to it. No, you can't. You can say that, but that's not what the document says. The document, they're putting the plans and specs, and the plans and specs have.
Yeah, there's so many iterations.
Time to direct plans and specs. Is it not? They're resolving to direct the plans and specs to be created based on these documents. Correct. The plans and specs that are being approved include the requisite plan and phase on those things. How do we know that? Because they're not publicly available. Because I'm telling you.
It's a mixed up process.
Trust that when there's conflicting information. That's what I'm saying.
You gotta trust us, cause that's our responsibility, so. That's what we're here to do, is take a look at the scope of the project, take it to the next step, take public comment, so your public comment is heard. I see.
It would be helpful if you could add the word
Sure.
into the resolution.
Just, I guess one more thing is, in the mill and overlay process, there's just a couple of houses in the past few years up there that have had tied into the sewer, or the main line on Skyline Drive. So obviously there's dips in the roadway. And also where there's culverts underneath, I mean, you can't actually drive on that side of the road if you bottom your car out. I'm assuming you said earlier they're gonna build up parts of that road. Is that something that they would actually build up, or are they just going to scrape off the top and go over it? And it's gonna be that same problem?
No, because we're reclaiming pavement, and that means level things out, and those might be areas where we do those spot repairs.
Okay, yeah, cause I wasn't 100%, I'm not fully aware of the difference between the reclaim and the overlay, so, yeah, thank you.
Jack.
I think the other thing that I would like to say is, it goes back to March 1st of 2022, when I, addressed this with Tony, and in the response he gave me, says reclaiming, shaping, compacting, putting 3 to 4 inches of asphalt and shouldering options, because I suggested that it should be widened. And I do believe it should be widened for safety. There is availability to widen it. I've gone and measured it myself. There's only one street sign, one utility box that would need to get moved to widen it. There's several reports from the state that say widening streets makes streets safer for traffic and for pedestrians. There's plenty of people that walk on it. And so I feel like that feedback hasn't been actually put into these plans. I think.
Just recall, we had to take 4 streets offline to make the project feasible, so there's always a scaling of the entire project. So we aren't at this point looking to add scale, because we've already taken 4 streets and pushed them down further, so.
But if you're going to reconstruct a street, you should do it in the best possible way, right? If you're gonna do it the first time, do it the right way, because you can't come back and redo it a second time, because you're not gonna have enough money to do it.
Are you talking about widening Market?
No.
Cause
Skyline.
that's the only street we're reconstructing, is Market.
Right, but you can widen Skyline when you reclaim it, you can build the shoulders up, all that stuff, you can do it if you choose to improve your city street to the level it should be for the safety of the residents that live on it.
Well, that's not the scope of work that we have in front of us, or that's been urged, so that isn't before us, an additional scope is not before us, so.
Right, I urged it back in 2022, I did August of 2024, so that's where I'm saying, it hasn't been heard, it hasn't been put into these plans, and now is the only public hearing that came up that Skyline's been on. Because I've got emails here that say it was gonna happen in 2023. That was hopeful completion of the project. It didn't happen then. So it's been 3 years, so I didn't know if it was ever gonna happen until I saw the notice on Facebook of this meeting happening.
So
So
these street
there have
projects, these street projects are very complex, as you can see, and we have to tick through a very purposeful, obligatory, process of series of steps. And so an email about, I desire this and, in the future, it leads to this moment, but this is the scope that we have before us. This is the street reconstruction project that we have before us. It won't change in scope.
But these are responses that came back from your public works director.
Yeah, our public works director doesn't make the approval of those street projects, so you're looking at the body that does. Tony always tries to be informative about what's coming, everybody wants to know, when is my street gonna be improved? And there's as you can see, long list of street improvements, including the 4 streets that we took out of this project to make it feasible.
So he doesn't advise on what should be improved on streets?
Go ahead, Brian.
We did talk about widening the roadway. I would tell you that it's not safer to widen the roadway. The wider the road, the faster people drive, it drives speeds up. Narrower roadways promote lower speeds. That's part of the reason we chose, recommended not to widen it. So we did talk about widening it, made a conscious decision from an engineering standpoint not to widen it.
I have a question, as being one of the 4 on the top here, of $15,000 of improvements, how much am I gonna come up with that, for taxes or payments, or what you're gonna do here?
You have a couple options with assessments, whatever the final assessment is, you have the option of paying it in advance with no interest. And there'll be some guidance on that when the assessments are adopted, you'll get direction on, the dates you need to pay that by, but not for interest. If you choose not to prepay it, it gets certified to your tax rates, and it gets certified and will be over 15 years at an interest rate where the council will select. So you can essentially finance it through your taxes if you don't wanna pay it up front.
But as you probably heard foreshadowed, we have to discuss what that impact really is gonna look like for you and the very few properties that are on that intersection, and take a look at past practice and what makes sense, given that this intersection is touched by, 4 or 5 properties, something like that. So that's again,
Drive it constantly.
yeah, that's again kind of down the road.
River view, it's the river walk, the river, it's a constant.
Yeah.
I've lived there all my life.
Yeah, just like Main Street owners, yeah. So we will definitely be addressing that, not this time, but as Brian said, that's a part of the process. I can't remember where it was in the timeline, but yes, I can see you.
Yeah,
11th Street East. We're gonna resurface from Broadway to Milligan. Curve.
Yes.
Blacktop curve. From Milligan to next street down, they're gonna put curb and gutter in there because of the apartments, or you said there's 2 different jobs being done there.
So if there's existing asphalt curb there now, we will remove and replace it with new asphalt curb. If there's existing concrete curb there now, that will remain. We will only spot repair it in locations if it's cracked or broken or severely. So that's the curb situation. But there's no curb at all there now, drainage works, we won't put any curb.
All right, I'm on 11th, on Broadway, on 11th, and I was with the Broadway project. All that was on my assessments, is that still gonna be the $1,800?
I have to look at the roll, I can check in with you that.
Fine.
Yeah, for the meeting, it should be highlighted on the assessment roll in a color. If it's not, then we don't have evidence of that.
I've noticed my neighbor just through straight across 11th Street, his name is not on this list.
Okay. Yeah, you should, I wanna talk to you about that, get that information. Those are some of the things that we check into and verify between the preliminary assessment roll and the final. And that's why we present this preliminary.
I know there's probably a lot of people here that live in their homes by themselves. They don't have a spouse anymore. With an income coming in, they all pay for stuff like this. People don't think of that, do they?
Well,
Personally, project.
Oh, we do.
You wanna talk about the apartment over?
Oh, yeah, there is a deferral process, that's in the city of policy. It requires, it's income based, and so it requires you to submit some information to the city clerk.
That is where it's submit, yeah.
Yeah, and if you qualify, then you can.
If you don't get information like that from the city or nothing,
You just get
overlooked.
You'll get that information, everybody that's being assessed will get that information in the assessment notice.
I mean,
The assessment.
Rosler project there, I paid that in full for a lake. Now, I'm kind of curious what this is gonna turn out to be,
Yeah,
so we'll go afterwards.
yep.
I got one last thing for you. Just in regards to the, so like edge of the roadway up along the skyline, you know, chunks of that blacktop over time just kind of like crumble off. And I know the way that it's shaped up there, it's not necessarily needed to have a curve, but is there's something you guys do now that may be different from back at the time to just try and prevent that from constantly breaking off?
Yeah, it's really about the shouldering and maintenance of the shouldering, but that's typically what happens when a road that doesn't have curb and gutter on it. It's just kind of the nature of that kind of road, so.
There's a couple feet of gravel on the side. And is there a way when they do that, maybe just to add a little bit of, a little bit of a shoulder, maybe not even gravel, but just compact dirt up against it?
Yeah, I mean, yes, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
Can you speak to how the people on Skyline are gonna be able to access their homes during construction?
Yeah, it'll be a little easier than it was in the downtown project, because we're not putting in a lot of pipes, so we even culverts and things, but, you'll have access, it'll be intermittently interrupted when they're, paving and other things, but we'll send out notices and you'll know when access is gonna be limited, when they're paving in front of your driveway, that type of thing. You'll end up driving on gravel road when they reclaim it, but generally, you'll have access, it'll be intermittently interrupted at times, we'll let you know when that's gonna happen. It'll be inconvenient, but there's no real way to live without that,
So
so.
we don't have to park in town and walk up.
You might have to park down the road, that's.
Ballpark, yeah.
Neighbor's driveway.
Some of us have old knees and then hips and shoulders.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions, especially related to the resolutions, because we do want to address that tonight, so we keep things on track. Plans go ahead.
I'm curious about the interest rate you mentioned will be determined by the city, I guess, for that levy.
We always make the decision on the levy every year, yeah, that's a council decision that occurs usually in December, we start those conversations in July, working up the budget, moving toward the final levy.
What would be, something that would be close? What are they looking at for a number?
We're talking about two different percentages here. I think you mixed the levy increase with the interest on the assessments. They're unrelated, completely different things. The interest rate on the assessment is typically based on the interest rate that the city gets on the bond that they sell. And oftentimes they'll
Estimated
say,
4.5%.
yeah, 1% above, but it's been in the anywhere from 3 to 5% range on past projects. So what you said was 3.5 on
4.5.
4.5.
We've got budgeted right now. But we won't know the final interest rate until we try to sell our bonds. We're talking about bonds.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Okay.
oh, that's what Mike would have to find.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's typically based on whatever the winning bond bidder is. What interest rate they offer the city.
So the entire project is basically gonna be borrowed against?
No, there was a spreadsheet or a slide up there that talked about the utility commission. Or the street sewer and water utility as a contribution to this. The assessments will play into it.
but yeah, it is all borrowed funding. That is correct.
Just, yeah, as far as how you pay it back, though, but there's other funding that comes in, the assessments come into play, and the utility, revenues come into play. So,
Thank you, Brian, for hosting us a neighborhood meeting, even though we didn't, we didn't create a good setting for everybody, but we really appreciate you being here. Anything further, otherwise we'll take action on these resolutions. I'm gonna close the public hearing after calling for a couple more chances for people to say something online. Anybody?
I just have one final thing, and I'm certainly, you don't know me, but I'm certainly not a perfect woman. But in the event in the future, if we could have a public hearing to ask you questions that we're asking you right now, it would be so helpful. Because this is things that are not common, right? We don't know them. you know, things that are near and dear to our hearts, we want it to be good for the community, but that I feel was missed.
Yeah, I apologize. We certainly intended to add that more informal, formal
Thank
meeting
you.
before this. Completely my fault for missing
Well,
those.
We're not perfect, but it's pretty in the future.
It's important. Yep, we've done it on past projects, so. yep.
And they usually feel just like this, so it was accomplished essentially, so thank you, Brian.
Yep.
All right, any further comment? All right, hearing now, close the public hearing at 7:11. And if anyone would like to entertain a motion, these resolutions ordering the improvement and preparation of plans and approving plans and specs, ordering advertisement for bids.
Also move.
Sorry.
We have a first and a second. Any further discussion from council? All those in favor say aye. Opposed, say no. All right, we'll try to keep on track. As was outlined in the packet, please take one, or if you don't want a paper copy, this is a part of the agenda packet online, very easy to pull up. You can take a look at that larger schedule to kind of see how this project is gonna, how the different processes for council will look for the next months to a year. And we look forward to any public feedback in the future. Thanks for coming. As I said, you're always welcome to stay. It's a beautiful night. I don't expect you to sit around for other items if they don't wish to. Paul's been so patient. This is a bright spot. Paul's here to talk about an update related to River Junction's Arts Council. He was gonna be our presenter at the top of the hour, but agreed to stick with us while we handle these questions, knowing that the neighborhood meeting did not occur. So thanks, Paul. Welcome.
Hey, everybody. My name is Paul Cushman, and I brought the council a gift. This is the first commemorative poster of an annual art show that we're starting. This will be September 13th. This is gonna be a nice art show of 20 to 30 booths of fine art that we're putting a lot of effort into creating. We'd like this to be an annual event that's great for Wabasha. We're not trying to do a festival type of a situation like they have in surrounding communities. We're really focusing on small, being able to contain under the bridge park area. And we want it to be something that artists really strive to be able to become part of. And grow an artist community coming down the river corridor, and on both sides of the river. So, Honorable Mayor, I brought you one
It's
here.
spectacular. I saw it from far. I didn't realize this was your poster. I saw it hanging at the, I suppose, chamber office.
Yeah, this is a painting by a local artist, Sherry El-Nashar. We've got incredible artists in our community. We're just gonna try and help them come out of their homes and their little spots and focus some attention on them. We think this will be a wonderful thing that people will really want to participate and come to Wabasha. And spend a little money and visit our brick and mortar places and have a sense of community. And it's healthy and good for everybody. This is a poster of the year, 2025 year. I'll start it here and just pass it through if you haven't seen this. And then this is the save the dates. This is the save the dates that we've been passing from here to the Twin Cities. We've got these save the dates advertised as far as Minneapolis. We're really trying hard to have a structured process of applying. We use a thing called Zapplication, where artists, over 100,000 artists, can look at the different art fairs in Minnesota and choose where they go. They can submit their art online. We can look at it. This is called a juried art show, where we have local artists that are viewing this prior to them being accepted. Right now, we have about 25 artists in our queue. And in July, we have some local artists that will preview that art. We'll close the window for applications. We'll preview that art. If we have enough to fill, great. If not, we'll open it back up again. And like I said, we're hoping to have 20 to 30 booths of art down there. The reason that I came to the council tonight wasn't to try to sell you on anything or anything like that, but it's really more of an informative thing. As president of River Junction Arts Council, the popularity of Music Under the Bridge and the plays and a lot of the activities that we do has really skyrocketed. In the last few years, our average attendance has been a little over 8,000 on Friday nights for the Friday night shows. Those Friday night shows are at 7 p.m. to 8:30. the crowds vary according to the type of music that we have. Just to give you an example, our average crowd size is 400 to 500. We've had 3 shows this year. The first 2 were at 5, the second one was at 425. But we have a lot of people out on the streets and at the brick and mortar businesses enjoying the music, drinking and eating, so it really spreads out to downtown. RJAC has been providing fine arts in this community since 1979. The board has gone through a lot of variations. Right now, we have 10 members on a 12-member board. We're extremely active and organized, and the reason I wanted to come to the city council was because at the beginning of the year, I reached out to the city, which, by the way, the city folks are incredible. They support us in every possible way. They help us get ready. They keep it clean. They make it look beautiful. They're always 100%. The nature of the phone call though was, I was like, well, based on last year's attendance, we had 1,400 people at ABBA, folks. I mean, there was 1,400 people in that downtown area dancing, but we only had 2 porta potties. Okay, and so that's an issue. I know there's been talk about fixed bathrooms in areas and that type of stuff, and that's for a future discussion. That's down the road when y'all find a way to do that. But this year, at our first concert, the 2 bathrooms were really overwhelmed. And I think that we're failing to count the music under the bridge crowd with our increasing tourist attendance and the folks that are just visiting our beautiful city. I think that we're not calculating that right, because those 2 parties were overwhelmed. And it was a real reflection upon us, River Junction Arts Council, City of Wabasha. So I made a phone call to the city and they said, we know that's an issue and we've had discussions. There isn't money in the budget to do that right now. I said, I understand completely. So I called Jason's, and Jason said, hey man, I'm so sorry that happened. I'm gonna get down there. I'm gonna get one down there on me. You know, I'll do what I can. Got one down there, lickety split. And he cleans them and he makes them look nice. So now we have 3. Okay. But really, if you look at the math, there should really be 1 porta potty per 150 people that are using that facility down there. They're getting overwhelmed. And it's not just the music under the bridge crowd. It's the wonderful, farmers market that we have and the other events that we're using down there. Plus, that corridor is just an incredibly popular place to walk. So I'm bringing that to your attention because I don't think that music under the bridge is gonna immediately all of a sudden lose popularity. It's a wonderful thing. People really enjoy it. And when you go into your discussions in August about budget, keep that in mind. Are there any questions about this year's activities? RJAC, anything along those lines? We are a nonprofit. We are 100% volunteer. And all of the funds that we get are donated. If you look inside the rack card that I passed around, you will see 31 sponsors. That is where the money for Music Under the Bridge and the plays and that type of stuff come from. We will be looking at grant processes for the next couple of years, but we're not quite there yet. You can see from the amount of people that participate in sponsoring that it's of a value to those downtown brick and mortar businesses. They find it value, otherwise they wouldn't be given their bread to support us.
How much are those porta potties a week?
I don't know. That would be a question for city manager.
I put the data in there.
It was in the agenda.
Yeah, I didn't see.
So it's,
1,500 a year for one or something.
yeah, regular porta potty is $165 a month or $11.55 per year, cause we do it April through October, right, Tony?
Right.
Yeah.
And then an 88 porta potty is $200 a month or $1,400 per year.
And we don't have money in the budget right now?
No,
For porta potties?
well, we do for the other porta potties. What we're currently paying is $4,865 per year for what we have.
Right.
That's what we
Like
have
the
there.
double that or.
Yeah.
For one more down there, we don't have the money.
Well, he gave you one, didn't he?
Yeah, they have the one they need.
They're saying they would, yeah, more, so. I'm saying one more, so there's.
He brought one down. I'm not sure what his intention, maybe that's on his cuff and he's just doing that because it's a reflection on his business as well. He did that out of the generosity of his heart. I'm not sure if he's sending you a bill or not for it. There should be one or two more down there, in my opinion. But I'm sure there's folks that have more information than that. I'm just bringing to your attention. Kind of the amount of people that are down there.
Yeah, I had no idea you had 1,000 or more people at any one given time. I mean,
I
I
had
don't know how
people-
it's full, but that's.
The first concert down there, I had people use my facilities, because.
We always run back to our office too.
Yes.
And to be honest, we
But I
haven't,
just can't believe that we do not have money for one more porta potty.
We don't have money for the street project that we just approved.
Yeah. I mean,
Well,
that's kind of.
let's think about
Yeah,
it in next budget. If you do just a real quick, simple math, and you say you don't like the number of 8,000 people visiting, say 7,000 is a more comfortable number for you to look at. If each one of those people spend $5 or $10 while they're here, and they leave with a sense of community and a vision of Wabasha, that's the way you attract folks, that's the way you attract tourism, that's the way you attract people to move into, so just keep it in mind for the next budget
and what you downplayed, I don't think you meant to, but I didn't, it wasn't as braggadocious as I might have been about it, is that RJAC is actually generating revenue for, they are giving to other organizations in the community, the food share, you know, or all the others that you've benefited, so there it's actually generating community support at this point, which is a really cool way for that organization to evolve. That's.
Yeah, we're simply using the bully pulpit to bring attention to some media items there, and if you can do that, super awesome.
Yeah.
We're planning another play, there's a Shakespeare play, July 23rd. The National Legal Center has agreed to pay additional staff and keep that facility open. We're not gonna be having food trucks in there with the specific purpose of, well, hey, it's Shakespeare. So you know, after a half an hour, people are gonna be wandering to get a piece of pizza and a cold beer, that type of thing, right? So, you know, we do everything that we do really with the idea that the folks that are coming down there are gonna enjoy it, have a sense of community, and then wander off into various places to enjoy community and hopefully have a nice beer over at the Triangle or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, we can show you what it looks like, adding 1, 2 to the budget. I suggested it should go under where we're contributing the food bank. You know, Main Street, we can just say 1,500 towards porta potties. And we can talk about it. I don't think we can afford 10.
We're gonna have some additional requests because we got the new park at Eagle Basin, so we got a porta potty there, we got $500 for wood chips at the Eagle Center, so it's starting to add up, and the only thing is I look at is the chamber, like when they have events, they pay for all the extra porta potties. We've always had 2, that's the way it's been, so I'm just stick with that until we decide something different.
And
Where's that $500 for wood chips at the Eagle Center? I thought the Eagle Center was responsible for all that.
We have some area on along the riprap, that's city, between the bike path and the river, and then we got the bump outs by, where you turn Glen Alley.
Mr. Tony brings up an excellent point in the difference between the two groups. We don't have a beer sale that we get money back from. We don't have we also don't have the amount of urine that, from the sale of that beer. So that's one of the reasons why they have that down there, is because, I mean, if you do the math on drinking folks per 100, it's really 3 porta potties per 100 if you're selling beer down there, and that really works for them, and it works great. But until we change how we generate money, right now, it's all generated by passing a hat and by the brick and mortar businesses in town. We don't also have that budgeted in. And if we do need to budget in future budgets, then that will come out of the amount of events that we can have and the quality of bands that we have. And,
We'll just keep in mind to talk about it when we budget.
That's what I told Paul, it's
Yeah.
good timing, it's a great awareness builder, it's a kickoff to an amazing season, I can't believe those numbers from other events, that's just amazing, so.
right, if you look at last Friday, we were in competition with events everywhere. Lake City was just right up the road, and we still had 425 people on the grass. And Urban Arrow was packed, the corner by the clock was packed, going all the way down past the triangle, people were moving about. We also had another 25 people that were just parked in the amphitheater by the Eagle Center, enjoying the weather out there. So it's really centralizing people down there, and that's a benefit.
So when the conference goes through the end of July,
Yeah, June, July, August. Mhm. And then in September, we'll close with the art fair.
So we got 4 months left. And I wanna make a motion that we, purchase these porta potty for down there. If there's no second, so be it. That's my.
Can we? Add
That'd be a-
stuff without noticing it, though?
We'd have to do it
Yeah.
as an agenda item, which we had Paul, he's acting like a very responsible agenda item, but he was just our guest presenter. I'm sorry, Dean, we didn't tee it up for action. I gave Paul the advice that we would wanna hear from him as soon as possible, but that the budget conversations are gonna start in earnest.
Under
here this summer.
forward. Item number 4, I'll add that to his agenda.
Under item,
Into the addition.
yes, which I called for.
Yep.
I think we should add it to the agenda in the future, just for procedural purposes, and we'll,
If the council finds in future discussion that you are leaning to do that. This week, I think the crowd will be sufficient with the 3 that we have. It's a bluegrass band. And they're absolutely wonderful, but that doesn't usually draw in more than 400 to 500. The following week is the return of ABBA, the fabulous band that drew well over 1,000 people last year. So if it does come up and it's something that just through discussion that you feel that you can work out, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, we won't be able to make that decision by then, but,
Understand?
okay.
thank you, Paul, thank you for waiting, thanks for all your work.
Oh, you're so welcome.
We welcome you to stay, welcome you to dash at any time.
Good night, y'all.
Thanks very much, really appreciate it. All right, our other public hearing item, oh, sorry, we were gonna tee up this, we think we can handle the FEMA issue quickly?
Yeah, and we'll do the Grant Boulevard one, and I don't think anyone is here for the nuisance ordinance.
Where are we now?
We reorganized because of
Yeah.
attendance for streets primarily, we could tell that most of the room was interested in that street item. We're
So
also,
we did 1.
Yeah.
2 now.
no, sorry, we did 2, we did not do 1. But we'd had Brian's recommendation that we also bump up general business 10-3 on the FEMA DNR mitigation program acquisition request.
And then number 2 would like to be bumped as well.
It's just a long agenda, so I'm sorry, we can't accommodate everybody because we still have a queue. Carolyn, you wanna talk about the mitigation program?
Yeah, and then I'll let Mr. Phillips address this. I told him that he would be able to do so now.
Sure.
There is a FEMA DNR mitigation program, where the city could receive funding to acquire and demo homes in the floodplain. And would be required to add a deed restriction whereby the vacant land remains vacant in perpetuity and owned by the city in perpetuity. We've got 2 property owners interested in seeing this program. After learning about the program, I recommended that we not pursue this program on behalf of homeowners. But I said, you know, Riley assisted me with that a homeowner could always appeal the decision. Both wanted to appeal it to council. The reason not pursuing the program is that we just got done trying to liquidate vacant lots that the city maintains due to our challenges with the budget. And we would be removing tax base by tearing down these homes, so lower and basically lower our assessed value. And, you know, it's for the next 100 years. So I did ask the grant officers if there by which a way that, you know, somebody else could acquire it or could get in private hands. And they said, no, it has to be owned by the city, and it would even be challenging to transfer that ownership to, say, the county or the school district. That would require their approval. And so that's my main thing. I was sharing that I've managed successful programs that tear down homes and rebuild them out of the floodplain. But that's not what's offered here. We cannot ever build anything. We have another vacant lot that we're maintaining near Quick Trip, and they have constantly asked us, we'd love to expand our Quick Trip, add tax base, and we cannot sell them that property. So I'm just mainly concerned about removal of the tax base and then adding another vacant lot for Public Works to maintain after we are intentionally getting rid of other vacant lots to reduce the maintenance obligations. Mr. Phillips, you want to share kind of your perspective on this? I think he's gonna review kind of some potential benefits, so go ahead.
Welcome.
Thank you, guys. Yes, I was, informed by Kyle, about this opportunity. There was a lot of,
Riley.
Riley,
Okay.
sorry, about the opportunity, and there wasn't a whole lot more discussed about it, or I guess informed to me about it. So I made a couple phone calls today to kind of get the idea of the other council members and see what everybody thinks about it. My understanding with the new floodplains, with the flood insurance and everything that goes with that, and the difficulty in the future to sell the property as is, and the exponential cost to improve the property to get it out of the floodplain, is kind of, very expensive. And it's already hard enough to get by in today's society as it is, as we just approved a very expensive budget, so just any extra improvements to the house would be very challenging to come up with. I talked to a couple of people that had some really good points on why we should pursue the grant. It doesn't come up very often. There's no guarantee it'll ever come up again. And since they obviously, they're offering it for a reason. I think it would kind of be shameful to at least not approve it, let them go forth with it, kind of leave it up to the homeowner to kind of make the decision. But I'd be willing to hear, other opinions from the council members.
Yeah, and just to add, how it would work is the city would receive the grant funding and we would move forward with the negotiation with you to acquire and demo the property. It's not the DNR or FEMA doing that, we would be taking on that responsibility, so,
Okay,
yeah. You, that's my understanding, Riley, yeah, okay.
In the past, we've done this buyout, project. I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, maybe at the 2001 flood. We looked at buying these houses out. At that time, FEMA said, we're no longer in that, we no longer do that. And I know what's been happening is the houses come up for sale, and I told her in a floodplain, then flood comes, oh my God, we're in a floodplain. I moved the furnace out and all the other stuff. And it's only 3 houses, I believe. And there's one other individual that's now interested in also. So I think it's in the best interest of Wabasha, city of Wabasha, to go ahead with this project and get those out of, the houses out of there. And I do understand that 100 years of no use, but, that's what we pay, for living in this area. With this, I think we will have all but maybe one house that's out of the community plan. That's one house on Franklin. No one knows.
What was, I avoided the area during the flood 2 years ago. What was the water situation on both these houses? Was it just in the basement? Was it
I
in the living room?
purchased it last year,
Okay,
but.
I don't even might remember.
It wasn't good.
In for so many bills.
Yeah,
It was-
just the basement or,
It was up to the floor.
okay.
Not just in
Yeah,
that house, but in a couple
And
of
another also is over.
Yes, I know it's happened before and it certainly can happen again, and obviously when that happens, it's not safe for the individual living in the house. And it's not safe for the foundation of the house or really anything.
And I don't think we're gonna get the program together, so, the way things being cut and so forth.
Yeah, I like the idea of, we don't wanna hamstring these properties for this future building, but I have no confidence that anyone is gonna be able to do anything with these anytime soon. I've worked with flood stuff a ton over the years and it's a burden to these homeowners and so you couldn't go and sell your house to anyone right now that needed a mortgage to buy it. They would go through the whole process. The lender would identify it's in the floodplain. And then they'd be looking at flood insurance to protect their mortgage, which is completely unaffordable, and so then you lose your buyer. So unless you were, you know, to lift the house or raise it and fill it yourself. Wouldn't make your investment back on it after you did that and sold the house. So I just don't see the potential for, you know, reasonable use at this point. Unless there's more to talk about here.
Unless the city buys, then charge them down, bring them bill up.
Yeah, we don't.
Which we can't do in this
Okay,
program.
no, if we don't go, you
Right.
can then do it.
Sure.
I don't
I mean. Okay. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I ran a program with the city, didn't do that, but we used other means, not something that would restrict development to never occur again. So,
We did what, buy the houses,
yeah,
and
but found monies, other funds that would not hamstring.
That was-
We don't have that, so,
Are
yeah.
there any programs out there that will let people basically get their house out of a floodplain or add fill, you know, just maybe something that Kathy Anderson would be able to look into? or
My
something?
impression, correct me if you think I'm not hearing them kind of between the lines. But when they talk, FEMA talks directly to the public and what they're basically saying, take anything out of this flood zone that you would need.
but I realized those. And she was in tears that entire summer, that she was constantly. And then she had like. Five.
Yeah, it's just very great, they lead with buyouts, but they did also mention, assistance, covering the cost of repairs last year, during the flood. I don't know exactly what that is, I haven't had enough time with this grant, but I'm very fast.
I mean, Riley, to be very clear, Riley did the right thing, reaching out to homeowners as our emergency management contact. And that is exactly what they tell you in that big drinking from the fire hose FEMA webinar, is that, you know, first do that and to get a sense of where your community is at, and then deal with all the public infrastructure, and then they give you a pot in it to evaluate a grant opportunity that's actually pretty complex on our side, and potentially on the homeowner's side. Which I don't know is, I'm not saying, I'm not sure that's unintentional. I mean, we see grants like that, where it's like, hurry up, and if you're absolutely ready to go and this fits your community perfectly, and if it's the situation perfectly, you're competitive, but otherwise you're kind of left, you know, not prepared, and that's the nature of these types of programs oftentimes.
Well, I just don't do the program background. It was very fortunate, we had this opportunity, but, I know in 2001, I think we bought out Abbott. And, I can't think who was by the.
Community garden there, oh, okay, yeah.
And thank God we did.
Bill Sargent too.
Bill Sargent, yeah. I think Phil, I done a program, part of that. So, I think like that.
So if you had other applicants beside, I mean, you're saying focus on Zach, because he's here at the table and he's been responsive to Riley. Are we allowed to do that? Did you recognize any?
Thought we had to give them the addresses of the people.
Yeah, they asked for specific people that reached out last year.
And there were 3 that were
The
just.
problem I have now is, now that we only have one day, there's other, homeowners that are interested in how to get a buyout, but.
Well, everybody like that, but the first step is to reach out to when your management director contacts you.
I reached out to.
Yeah, you did a really good job reaching out to me. I think I received a couple of emails and multiple phone calls. If I had any questions, he got me connected with Caroline, and then through that, I was able to reach the council members. So it was advertised pretty well, if you were willing to do a little homework. So, yeah, he did a really good job addressing this for me. I was actually working down at the condos when he called, so it's a little coincidence there, but I was very fortunate for that. So.
John, you know if this is something in a disclosure that would have to be disclosed if they're aware that it's in a floodplain?
It has to be. Well, I think one of Zach's problems is that we've been made aware for a number of years of them changing the flood maps. Through your due diligence, when you look at a buying a house, you would ask, I would put that contingent on what the flood maps are gonna end up being. He's in a contract for deed, so some of that due diligence kind of goes out the door. You can do that
Yeah.
without any, disclosure,
Sure.
you know what I mean? Because in the end, when they satisfies that contract, then that's when all of those things kind of come out the wash. It's kind of the risk of doing contracts. You know?
Yeah, I recently just worked for another fella at 318. Who sold his house and the buyer. So we took steps to take it out of the floodplain because fortunately it was hot. So I mean, the information is definitely out there.
I did talk to Chris Wise, the yellow house right beside mine. And he said, if you'd like to contact him to kind of hear the, difficulties that. He said I could give out his phone number tonight if anybody would reach out to him and kind of hear his point of view on kind of addressing on how you could fix the property, because, as he a lot of work to be done and to get it kind of out of that map.
So just so you know, we're not. Understand that and are, you know, surprised when people go to the expense. What? So with regard to other properties. We're engaged on that topic, but with this particular program, we can't even improve it for 100 years, so it just sits as a grassy parcel. If we could improve it, we'd be having a very different conversation. And that's where I'm kind of, without saying that I think FEMA is nefarious a little bit in doing this to communities, I think FEMA is just saying, make it not our problem. Never build anything here, just, you have to follow these rules and taxable property, I lost a home, I want neighbors like you on my street, it's just, you know, we're gonna have just vacant lots instead of housing, so we would be talking about this very strategically if we had the opportunity to improve the properties, but we're asked to say that we're fine with them unimproved for a century, that's the hurt. That's the.
But he also said that maybe it wasn't necessarily just get rid of the house with a buyout, maybe they would be able to offer fundings for the last.
Like on it, I'm. Just like. Sold last year and. So, another thing we'd have to hire on.
Yeah, they don't want to entice speculation on properties that have
it's-
problems.
Not to explore this further, but if it's a contract for deed, it may, if it's still in the rock ownership. Theoretically, that's who we'd be paying either way, I
Yeah.
think, I'm not sure, but
Is it,
that's a good point.
is it worth putting this off for, you got a week?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, to respond. Yeah. And like I said, I mean. These opportunities are made scarce and very timely for a reason. Yeah. They want the perfect solution to have access to a program that has limited resources. But they're not gonna give you a lot of time to figure out whether you're that project.
Right, I'm assuming we could ask, or is he eligible for grants to improve the property, that wouldn't be. I don't think anything anybody
Would disagree with.
disagree with.
You mean authorize that if that's a bit?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's kind of what he made it sound, where
yeah,
if we say no, we shut down any opportunities. If we say yes, we at least open that door to see what they can help us out with.
what I was concerned with opening the door. Was opening the door to demolition and a permanent deed restriction that remained vacant, so. But. We would certainly ask, could we do this instead? You know?
Yeah, I mean, we could say no to wanting to acquire the property, look into that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just spent all that time trying to get rid of city property, the apartments and all those other things and. You know, I've changed my mind kind of on the whole thing, we spoke earlier on the phone and.
I know, I really feel for you. I look at those
Yeah.
houses, I love that street, I wanna always have
It's totally.
neighbors there, I don't want houses to, you know, we lost. A tough lot, and I keep thinking, how can we solve that? For that potential, it's just a tricky part of the city, and
This is gonna cost staff time and expense, well, I mean. The amount of money they incur just administering these programs is it's crazy when you add it up.
It's gonna come back again when we have a 2001 flood again. And. Then it's gonna come back in a major way.
Have a huge.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If we have another 2001 flood, this subject will come up again. So.
and that is the other theme. These FEMA conversations, webinars, which are informative, they're so dense, they're not suitable for the public, they're like really inside baseball. Is they're saying as a city, you know, remain resilient by making all these problems go away, well, that's impossible, that, you know, at a local level, so.
So what is your annual flood insurance fee? What's your premium?
I would have to look at the bill to send me.
So you don't need to know what a flood insurance policy would cost for that run.
I mean, I don't have I didn't bring my flood insurance policy with me today.
Does anybody want to make a motion to approve moving forward on the grant? If Riley learns tomorrow that there's an avenue for the,
I'll make a motion.
okay, so that's for the possibility of assistance for repairs. Is that what you understand to be either repairs or mitigation on the property? Kind of a gray area? Yeah.
Just two properties, right, Frank? You said?
There's two total, yes.
Okay, that motion stands with a second.
We clarify the motion.
Yeah, so, cause it's gray for me, cause it's gray for Riley, I think is the motion deemed to approve the program, pursuing the program,
Yes.
if the program permits improvements to the property or mitigation or
It's cheaper.
repair to the property.
Funding opportunities.
Only.
Only,
Is that right?
I don't wanna buy it.
We don't wanna buy.
No, my motion is. For.
Okay, so your motion is to make application of the program. Is there a second to make application of the program unrestricted?
Okay.
Okay, Phil,
Now my motion.
there you go.
Look into, other programs and so forth.
Do we really need a motion for that? Can't we just look into it?
Well, that's true.
Well, I think if you would have to be able to.
I think we're authorizing him to pursue the program, right? We do usually.
I would assume we could pursue the program tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll just ask them and if.
Yeah.
I mean, they say, no, you have.
But what did they say, we're 1 day or too late?
They were giving us time. I thought we told them we had council coming on, right, Riley?
Yeah, and I had to ask for this extension, I was supposed to let them know 2 or 3 weeks ago.
So I think we should resolve something so that we at least. There's a balance in it. So we have a.
Good opportunity.
I'll do my motion
Which motion?
to
Amended one.
pursue other, funding sources for lifting this now, really problem.
Other programs or other support within this program?
Others for from the program.
Okay. Clear on that one. We have a second?
So we're just asking them, can we get money to help them out?
Yes.
That's it?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll second that.
All right. Any further discussion? All right, thanks for your time on this. It's a big thing for us to kind of get our heads around without a lot of detail, and Riley doesn't have that detail either, so it's not his fault. All right, hearing no further discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Thanks for being responsive. Thanks, Riley, for doing the detective work about who's, willing to kind of look for assistance. We'll learn tomorrow what that means. All right, thanks, Zach.
Thank you.
All right, now everything we reorganized is done, right? We're gonna go back
We
to,
still need nuisance one.
right, but that's in order, I guess it's in
We
order.
gotta go back to
Yeah.
the nuisance ordinance, but the, Mr. is here and requested that we could do Lance's one.
Oh, so that's the actual property one.
Yes.
Okay, so sorry, we will hang on to this, that's with the junkyard ordinance for a second. We're gonna go to 10-2, the resolution for 918 grant, or 930 grant and 936, okay?
Do you mind if I let you all start? And then I can,
Well, first of all, we met yesterday at the property. Put together a PowerPoint, I don't know if that was distributed to everybody. And then I had submitted a letter today, with a couple of, extra photos. Hopefully you all saw that. I was not at the last meeting, Mr. Binner was concerned that the letter that we had sent last time, maybe had been reviewed by everybody, so. You'd have an opportunity to review it. I think generally, in my opinion, we're here with good news. If you look at the photos, if you had a chance to drive by Mr. Benner's property, it's markedly different. Than it was in September, when this situation kind of arose. When we met out, at the property yesterday, I think there was general consensus that the parcel on 92 has been mitigated. There's one or two items there that, Mr. bidder would have on there, but it certainly seems the 918 is mitigated to at least the administrator's satisfaction. There were a few items on 930 and a few more items on 936. That were the topic of discussion. If you note, in our letter, frankly, we don't necessarily agree that those items meet the definition of junk under the ordinance. That being said, I'd be interested in continuing to try and placate folks who disagree. Mr. Bitter is in agreement that he will first construct a fence between 918 and 930, which would automatically screen, and I would say the overwhelming majority of the items that were the subject of concern. And just for the board's understanding, that's a very short fence. It's, I don't know, 15 feet tops. Mr. Benner versus the panels. He's in the process of trying to engineer a way to build that fence so that he can still access the rear of the yard through that area. You know, so I anticipate that he'd have that done in 30 days. That would, by our estimation, essentially take care of the majority of 930. There are a couple of items on the driveway at 930. And there's also a pallet of high grade smoking wood that Mr. Bitter is going to have indoors shortly. There was a few loose bikes that the chief was concerned about under the truck, which submitted getting those out of there as well. And then I think 930 has essentially reached the point where it's mitigated. 936, as much as chief administrator and maybe certain members of the board might not like it, the remaining items on 936 are all licensed and tabbed larger vehicles, titled vehicles, that are all tabbed and operable. There is one pickup that is not tabbed, but Mr. Bitter will have that done very soon. There are also some trailers which clearly not meet the definition of junk, but Mr. Bitter has gotten the overwhelming majority of items out of there. Now, there were a handful of items alongside the building that were pointed out that Mr. Bitter has agreed to get back behind the screen as well. Other than that, if we're getting down to individual items, there's also a air compressor that Mr. Bitter is in the process of trying to set. At the time that we did the inspection or the meeting, however you want to characterize it, there were some items on a flatbed in the street. Further evidence of the fact that Mr. Bitter has been moving items. Those items were are being sent to auction as soon as auction slot was available. And there was a couple of cast iron sinks. Mr. Bitter, since our meeting, even has compiled another pile of scrap to go that includes those sinks that were of concern to the administrator and chief. So the items that remain are all titled and way that the ordinance reads now, from our perspective, they're not in violation of the ordinance. So at the time of the last meeting, we had kind of some discussion about what was acceptable, I guess. I think the administrator would like to pin down the number of items, how many items would be acceptable outside of the screen for sale. It's just the nature of the business makes that very difficult to do. So, if that's what we're dealing with, it's our position that goes kind of beyond the nuisance ordinance. But what we had said is that we would maintain a reasonable appearance consistent with his use of the property as a business and then generally commercially zoned area. And that, from our perspective, will be consistent with the majority of what it looks like right now. And, you know, if you look at those pictures that I attached to my letter, I'm certainly nobody driving by there would be under the illusion that this is anything other than a business where he's selling these lawn tractors. And, you know, there's, I would say, a very reasonable number of those out on the street at this point. And the administrator can correct me if I'm wrong, but, well,
I counted.
So, you know, there's a couple of tweaks that need to be made here, but this property is not the same property that we all were considering in September or more important in February after the notice had been sent out. It is.
This is what it was in September.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, if you look at those pictures in September versus what we're looking at now, it was a totally different property, and, you know, Mr. Benner has worked diligently to make that happen. You have to remember that he, for a great deal of time, he was fighting the weather. And he also has another job that he has to do. He has to maintain his existence, while still doing this at the same time. And you know, to my way of thinking, he's done a tremendous. That's the area there where the fence is gonna solve that problem, in between those two.
And these items kind of in front would be moved behind them.
Right, everything is swing back behind there, and he had hoped to have that done already, but he's kind of trying to figure out exactly how to make that as workable as possible, so you can get to the back.
So this item would be removed along with
Yeah, that's the 10.
building material.
That's the 10, yeah.
There's 2 fridges and grills and 2 freezers remain, those would stay. The cup cap, what is this, Lance, this red thing?
And that's a cap for a
No gap.
That would be removed, right?
Yeah.
And then this I understood would stay, I don't know what that is.
Okay, so that's a sweeper, or I'm sorry, what Mr. Benner referred to as a billy goat, so it's a motorized cart. That
Okay.
allows you, so it's a piece of equipment that he would work on and set. It, as it exists there right now, it's perfectly functional as it is intended to be. And same with that yellow sweeper on the right. It's a functional piece of equipment that works as it's supposed to. So that tent would
These
go
are
in,
the bikes.
and those are bikes, those would go.
Yep.
Uh,
And then,
this is the truck that needs to be tabbed,
yeah, this part gets tapped, everything else would stay.
and it's all tabbed and operable.
Hmm.
Interestingly, the RV has created another. Well, actually, interesting. So the original concern was that the RV was inoperable and on the lot. Well, Mr. Benner has proven everyone wrong, and the RV is in fact operational and has moved around the neighborhood. And now the right is that.
That's not necessarily better.
Now that's right, is that it's too operational, I guess. So it moves too much, or it stays in one spot. So,
And I just,
you know,
yeah.
those are issues that you can choose to address, but they're not nuisance issues. It's an operable item that goes
And then-
around.
These are the miscellaneous items referenced, the fence
Yeah.
gap would remain open. This is their proposal in the air compressor. Are we saying removal, Lance, or placement unknown was?
No. I'll find a place for it, but.
Okay.
What do you mean the fence gap will be open?
That's his plan, is to keep this open, so you
Back
drive.
alley?
Yeah, that's not the back end. I mean,
That's a
that's.
side street.
Okay.
You can't see back there unless you absolutely open it. So from the main roads, it looks well, and then from the alley, it's completely screened back there as well. So generally speaking, it's all behind screen there. He's done a tremendous amount of work reshaping that lot, to accommodate, what he's done there. Unfortunately, we don't have the picture going the other direction, but, again, everything to the right of that is all titled equipment that's properly licensed. So there is as administrator points out, there's a couple of, a folding chair and a defunct grill, and a couple of things there that would take it 25 minutes to get those moved, and you'll get them moved. So you have a choice. I mean, you can do what you want to do. At this point in time, you know, it's our position that the overwhelming majority of what's out there doesn't meet the criteria of counties. He's got to be allowed he's gotta be allowed to run the business. He's in a generally commercial, area there. He's been paying taxes as general commercial for many years. And his business is legit. He's during the course of these events, he has liquidated a number of items, and he's had other items come in and go back out. The original inventory that we're talking about, the overwhelming majority of that isn't even there. It's been sold and turned over. So he's doing a legitimate business. People have to understand that's not a residential, not a residentially zoned lot. But to our way of thinking, the amount of work that he's done here, I would say precludes space. That being said, he's willing to do those few things. He's asked for a little bit of time to complete them. 30 days to get that fence designed and put up. And then just an additional, so it'd be those 30 days and then another 30 days to clean out the last of the scrap items that are laying around. Some of that stuff that has to go to auction, you can only get it into an auction at certain times. So he's been working diligently, and both the chief and the administrator saw that the next trailer to head to auction is all loaded up and ready to go. But he's very close to having everything. So I'm primarily here to answer questions. I know you're gonna do what you wanna do, but I think it's impossible to find the 918 as a nuisance at this time. I think if you find that the other two lots are a nuisance, I can drive from here to Butcher and find 3 properties that have as much garbage on their yard as what you would consider to be junk in this. So I just think the situation's been mitigated. Happy to answer any questions if anybody has any.
I will finish it with, they are not willing to commit to a certain number of items, and under the current nuisance ordinance, they would not. We'll be discussing some new junkyard storage, et cetera, which would in the future, once it's adopted, require as a legal non-conforming use that he has an agreement on outside storage. So if there's feedback now, it is theoretically something we could address in the future in terms of the number of items that could be outside under that ordinance versus the action we're doing now. I think just the main concern is I definitely would be in favor of a cap of the number of items stored outside related to his business, but I think it could also be achieved as we adopt the new ordinance. The other thing that makes the vacant lot look crowded when you drive by is the number of vehicles parked there. And he is correct, under our current ordinance, you could park 20 vehicles on your vacant lot if you keep them all licensed and tabbed. And that is something we'll be discussing if everyone still wants to talk about it later in this meeting under the future ordinance. But under the current one, although when you drive by, people may say looks the same, that wasn't, the number of vehicles stored there is not something we can address. It's only what we would consider junk items, and that the definition was the area of contention, basically, of, is this forklift here, this orange forklift that creates, some visual clutter along with all the vehicles and the boat trailer. But, is he actively using that for his business? Is it a piece of junk, or is it, and that's kind of under our current nuisance, you can accumulate items if theoretically you could argue it's not junk. The smaller items that we identified moving around, in my opinion, seemed like miscellaneous items, rusting, etc., that we kind of picked out that should definitely be removed, or screened.
Screening, I think I misinterpreted what was provided, or I wasn't listening as carefully as I should when you described it. I was under the impression that the screening is complete, your fencing is complete this time, but is that not correct? Is there more fencing to be complete, to be constructed?
Yeah.
he intends to build an additional fence between the two buildings.
Three
Uh,
times and showed on the picture.
yeah,
There's a
but
lot going on, so I'm
right here, this is where the fence is gonna go, the screen, the miscellaneous items back there. But Mr. Benner does not intend to build a fence here. I was under personally the impression that it would be completely closed as well, but Mr. Benner wants a wide access to move things in and out of, and has also kind of maxed out with his budget and ability to continue to build fencing, so. So I guess the question is, you know, 30 more days, I think. Do we wanna remove something as a nuisance? Or do we want to serve the order declaring it a nuisance? I asked Mr. Flaherty with the new ordinance, how does that all work? And basically how the parcel has evolved in time, and I didn't necessarily get a clear answer, so that would be something we would need to discuss. You guys are the quasi judicial group that says, is 19 still a nuisance? Is 930 still, you know, if we wanted to adopt something, you could kind of vote, hey, we think that all three of them still meet that definition of junk, you know, so.
I don't disagree with your summary of, or your flow chart there. I think an option of a new ordinance creates, issues that are not outlined in the flow chart. I would have more discussions with Mr. Flaherty about that. That's my way of thinking that likely starts the whole process over again.
Well, I'm maintaining that just building a fence doesn't declare the nuisance to go away. I would give it 30 days, and 30 days only, and then we'll make a decision.
And the time being, we address our adopted new nuisance.
No, I mean, I'm sure there's gonna be issues about the new ordinance versus not, I think if he does the stuff he does the next 30 days. Then we don't declare it a nuisance, and then we can look at the new policy and, cause there's other things we're adding to that.
Why don't you add, 60 days?
Cause I'm sick and tired of hearing this discussion that should have been taken care of 4 months ago. Is my opinion. So why don't we just give them a 90 days? I mean, at what point we stop talking about this?
And,
That's why I say 30 days and that's it. Then we declare it a non-nuisance or a nuisance or something. Because otherwise this is just gonna drag on so long. As it's dragged on since September.
Well, in fairness, it's dragged on since the end of January, when notice was properly served.
That's your argument, but yeah, but we've been talking about it since September, so I'm fine with the 30 days, then we make a decision.
Next council meeting is the 5th. That's
32 days then, right?
whatever, is that fine?
Well, we could just say until by the next council meeting, that's, because, yeah, I'm good with that.
You making the motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second, we have a first and a second, further discussion, any clarification?
I just wanna add that, like, if next month you say it is a nuisance, there's still a process that's gonna.
We're aware.
Okay.
We're aware.
Be showing up on his door and.
All
All
in
things
favor?
away, so.
We have a first and a second. Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
People have been waiting.
For which piece?
I think-
Airbnbs.
Oh, well, we appreciate you guys sticking around for that. So Airbnbs is a more informal discussion, just. Some of what we do as council is very bound by process. Some of it is just preliminary at this point, and that's what this item is. So we had a really nice group of neighborhood representatives come to our last council meeting to alert us to the kind of a clustering of Airbnbs in their neighborhood. We've got limited, I would say, kind of staff involvement, just to kind of high level look at the issue. And you can read that as part of the packet and staff, you know, as Caroline, if you, Christie, we're gonna.
Christie was gonna. do
Christie,
this
thank you
one.
for your patience and thanks for this work. Can you hear us okay?
Yeah, you bet. Can you guys hear me?
We can. And we can see you. Thank you.
Awesome.
I'm gonna pull up that memo, okay, Christy? Can you see it?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, and then it's
Yeah,
on.
if you guys want me to
Okay.
just kind of quickly walk through
Yeah.
this, we've had the world's longest night meeting in the history of night meetings.
On the most beautiful night ever. We like to
Oh,
do
bless you.
that.
Okay. Okay, so I'll just go through this at a high level, guys, and we can discuss at your leisure what you have additional questions for. So the initial request came in at last month's city council meeting where we had some neighbors come in from Skyline Drive who are concerned about too many rentals on that street. So between Skyline Drive and Skyline Heights, Carolyn asked me to get some research done for that. Um, and I just wanted to let you guys know that Wabasha actually has about 49 registered short-term rental properties that we manage and take care of. Um, and if you just do a simple verbo search of that in the internet, you guys can all see that. You can see, and I supplied you guys with a map, Carolyn, maybe you can skip to the map, but you can see that what the neighbors were really talking about was
So
these
where's
5
the map?
parcels.
Is that on another link? Cause I don't know that I saw the map.
I didn't see it.
Okay,
Nice.
Christy, I'm gonna stop my share and then you share your screen.
You can imagine it, it's clustered. It was described in the memo as clustered on that
Yeah.
place and
up
then
there,
clustered in downtown. We don't have clusters all over Washington.
Okay.
Yeah, so sorry about that, guys. I didn't know that the wrong one got. Can you see my screen?
Coming. Yes, we can.
There
There it is.
Yay, here we go, the map. Okay, so here's your zoning map. And essentially the folks who came to chat with you guys live here in Skyline Drive. And I won't move the map around much because that takes some time to regenerate for you guys. But there are 5 Airbnbs in the R1 zone. So that's that bright yellow color. We've got one here located on Main Street. And these are just the folks that are registered. You know, if they're kind of below the radar, we don't necessarily know about them. But we've got 4 listed here on Skyline and Skyline Heights. So as those folks came in, at least you guys can have kind of a graphic. And they're all within a half a mile of each other. As the crow flies, you can tell that they're even closer than that. And so those are those 5 parcels that we listed. And I did some homework by saying, okay, what are our police calls? What are the actual kind of points other than that they're kind of clustered together? And so we contacted Joe. The police department said that there really weren't, there was actually no calls. The last week, I think we got 1 call based on something being too loud, but the problem was quickly resolved, and it didn't require any action from the police. So then I just went to the World Wide Web in Minnesota, trying to say what other communities are doing with their short-term rentals and what's out there. I found 2 separate communities that limit their rentals near Wabasha. One is actually the city of Winona, and one is Florence Township in Goodhue County. Florence Township actually limits the total number of rentals in their R1 zone. So if you can remember that yellow map, they only allow 15 in their whole zone, and they only allow 5 in what they're calling their old Frontenac Historic Zoning District. So they do actually limit how many they have in their single family zone. Winona also has had some rental concerns. They of course have the university, so it's a little there are a few steps ahead of us in that, and too many rentals that they've experienced both within the university area, also along Lake Winona, and they're moving towards reducing their limits. But beyond that, I also go to the League of Minnesota Cities. I just find it's usually a great resource for research on this type of thing. They listed another couple of communities. So we have Little Walker. It's only a community of 600 people. They require interim use permits for all their rentals. That would take quite a planning endeavor. And again, we have lots of folks that may not even register. So I don't know if that's a good direction, but little town of Walker does that. New Brighton, which is a city of about 23,000 people, had a general statement that the league put in that said, in general, the city has achieved the desired win-win outcome, basically by saying that our process needs to be simple and inexpensive. So that's kind of the scope between 600 and 24,000. That's kind of how different cities have dealt with it. And then I just wanted to quickly highlight kind of the good, the bad, the ugly of this stuff for you guys. Short-term rentals are largely kind of on the honor system for registering. That's just a fact. Not all short-term rentals are licensed. Not all of them are even marketed or put on the internet. I live in a community where there's stuff for rent that isn't on the market. It's just the way the world works. We can't regulate them all, mostly because they're moving targets. Some people have them open part times or then they sell it, and anyway, on and on and on. The big one here, city staff just doesn't get enough revenue from the registration process to really staff this. So more than they currently do. And then the next question you guys might ask is, well, the city has a one-time fee of 200. We could possibly raise that. But there's kind of a critical nexus there with so many fees and maybe less honor system happens. Then we've got the fact that folks who are converting short-term rentals means that visitors are coming to town, and that's a great thing for Wabasha. And also short-term rentals take away from our critical housing needs and families that can move in. And of course, the proposed nuisance ordinance that you guys are going to see at some point tonight, unless we just get tired and table our meeting, but that can actually regulate some of the negative impacts that some of the folks who came to last week's meeting, last month's meeting might have had. So we can maybe address some of those concerns then. So kind of just down to three questions for you guys, and we can dive into this in any direction that you guys would like. Just wanted to share. Should we consider restricting the number of short-term rentals in the R1 zone? I'll get back to that map quickly. If yes, maybe we can work with Mike Flaherty on that, Planning Commission, try to figure out the legalese and kind of what a number might be. Question number 2, should we update our licensing and registration and kind of try to address some of these concerns in that way? Or number 3, should we wait and see if the nuisance ordinance kind of manages some of those concerns and issues for folks since there hasn't been any complaints? So again, here's the map. And then I added the registration kind of at the back too. It's kind of a 2-pager that we ask people to do. So from that, kind of what's the direction you guys would like to go through? Or, are there more research things that we can tackle that will help you understand the problem better, or direction for me to take?
I'll just add that if you just do an overall cap in all R1, that would not necessarily address theirs unless we capped it at no more than 5 in the R1. We'd have to cap it at where it's currently at. If you did a cap of 6, the next person online on Skyline Drive could put it there. We did talk about, could we cap it at within a half mile or 1,500 feet? That just involves more staff time to calculate that, but and the other thing is, just coincidentally, Airbnb was a vendor at this conference, and they suggest like an easy online registration process with online payment. I'd love to go to that, because if we make it easier to comply, hopefully everyone registers. And that if we wanted to automate lodging tax collection, which I would love, it would be an act of our legislature. So I would be perfectly willing to ask our legislatures. We're a little tiny town, like this is really cumbersome to collect this lodging tax from 49 different properties. Could this be automated? What Airbnb explained is they're not willing to do it unless the legislature tells them they have to, because then Verbo is not going to comply and all the other competitors, and then all of a sudden their prices are higher than everyone else's.
So they currently don't do what you're desiring, but they're proposing. Okay.
We've asked.
So that's a long-term strategy.
Yes. We'll make plans for the legislature, so
Yeah.
maybe we can add a bill.
One more thing to dilute our message at the Capitol.
It's true.
So with regard to Walker, I was just curious because they are so small. I mean, they're a booming resort community in the summer, so that it's not like they're a 600 person town between here and Plainview. But when you said that would be more work, what do you think is going on with that strategy, Christie? Do you understand why they might be doing it the way they are with the interim use?
Oh, well, interim use just, I mean, it involves the planning commission, Tim and I can chat with you and about what that means, but they would have to go through a formal process and do a hearing. The reason that it works is because we can look at it and say, well, how many are in the neighborhood, and do the setbacks work, and do these folks have enough parking, and what do we do when they have, if they're gonna have a fire in the backyard, is there enough space for other neighbors?
Yeah,
But
I think,
it's,
like, we say this when we talk about childcare, it's like, there's no solution that you can just pick up from another community and use in your community, it's gonna be something that your community figures out. But I would guess that when Walker has similar needs and issues based on their recreational tourism and their seasonal tourism that we experience. What's unique about
right,
Skyline is that it's this, the map is helpful to show that it's clustered, but really, I think that properties show us some bluff face, it's really condensed to like the street, it's like having 5 on your block. It's not even that area of R1. So I appreciate
right,
that, the R1 is great, but it's not quite fine tuned. Any other thoughts?
right.
Well, while I don't wanna do more work in the planning commission,
What?
I mean, if we restrict R1, I personally think we restrict R2. I think we restrict it across the city. I don't know what that entails. I think using the Walker approach with an IUP would be great to keep track of it, but a lot of work. Just to have all these people, so, I mean, I think we should send it to planning to say, do we wanna cap it? I mean, could we put a stop to them right now? There's other issues other than this to my mind, it's like people that buy houses that live in Rochester that come here on the weekend. That's an issue that, it's not much we're gonna do about it, but, that's just as big of an issue as short-term rental, so. I think we need to look at it, I think we do need to cap it at some point, or just stop doing it altogether for the time being. Because like Elma doesn't allow any right now, because there's so many over there.
Yeah.
I mean, there's like 40 of them.
Should we do like a moratorium until we?
Well, that's my question is that, could we develop a moratorium just to say, what do we really truly want? Cause I think we should cap it.
Yeah, I think we should cap it too. We need to find out how and what
What the
amount.
formula is
Yeah.
for that. So
Yeah.
Tim, okay, yep, 45, whatever units currently active as Airbnbs. So that's a lot of work, obviously, to get them all lined up. But then after that, it wouldn't be so bad because there would only be so many, an application or two kind of thing.
Yeah.
As some fall off. And if we work with a cap.
I mean, that's assuming people are gonna actually submit their ad.
But if we know, if we codify that they have to have an IUP. And then the public says, hey, something's happening next door to this vacant house, then that gives us an opportunity to go by and say,
Oh, you need an IP
yeah, you did that
and
IUP.
registration.
Yeah,
I mean,
you're being fined,
I mean, we
daily, as you do.
cap it now and then discuss, should we do the IUP and go from there. I mean, the other thing is I think residents needs to complain to the police or have some type, because I hear it down on Lawrence. Well, these guys were wild, there were so many people, but we have 0 police calls with it.
Right.
So it's like, well, I'm taking your people out. So I know people don't always want to do, you need to have some type of data to say, hey, these are just
What's interesting at my end of the neighborhood, there are short-term rental properties there and it's like a non-issue.
see, and your neighbors would disagree.
Yeah, probably.
So it's kind of like, but how do you judge that? I mean, I think for the most part, they're pretty respectable and pretty good, but.
It's just a separate issue to being a nuisance though, it's taking up.
No, it is.
So.
I mean, there's like, to me, there's 3 things. It's one is your short-term rentals are taking up all these houses, but we still have an issue with lodging tax. Are we collecting it or are we not? I mean, that's stuff that we need to, we have places right now that don't send it in. So I'm like, that's the issue we need to eventually address too. So I would recommend a moratorium on it for X amount of days or whatever, and then say no more until we figure out, do we wanna cap it, do we not? Is there an IUP process? Is there not? Because I think
Talk to
having,
Walker about how much work. it
having
is.
an IUP process, I think Christie said, would be more beneficial, because then we actually know where they are, and we can kind of dictate where they're at type of thing.
Right.
Yeah, well, I kind of am envisioning what these are gonna say, but I'll let them say it themselves. I mean, talk about your particular street
So
issue.
since the last, council meeting, and, you know, I got published in the paper, I had dozens of people come up to me, stop me, quick trip, you know, working, not working, and I expected some backlash too from it, maybe a little bit, be like, you know, it's good for the community, but every single person that came up to me, like, I couldn't agree with you more, we're trying to find a house, we can't find a house. And some people are complaining about, you know, noise or something like that. I mean, the last person who's ever gonna call the police.
That's you.
Myself, and
Don't wanna
she,
show up for the call.
You know, and like, yes, they're over there sometimes partying, like whatnot, I'm not gonna harbor anything like that. But it's just, and they didn't actually have posted up there on that last one, so 318 just registered as well, which wasn't posted on that. And then the neighbor on the other side of me, 308, just came over and asked because, 314 is interested in buying 308 for a specific reason. And so I'm sitting here like, there's gonna be 4 or almost 6 houses, you know, possibly.
Yeah.
And I'm just sitting here kind of like,
Yeah, and it's really nuanced. You know, I told Amelia this when she called. Go ahead, Amelia.
Well, I just wanted to add to that, in the discussion, I didn't hear the possibility of like managing it by just having it not house. Like,
Yeah.
where it's like house, 3 houses, and then another house would be an Airbnb, because we're possibly looking at being completely sandwiched by.
Right. So in the instance of Walker, they're having this go to the planning commission and they have to do, it's called an interim use permit, and then the planning commission looks at that.
Yeah.
So they know there's already 3 up there, and that goes, now there's 2 others, no. So that would be a very nuanced review that would be kind of, because our community, you know, your representatives know our community very well. We don't have to look at it on a map, we know what the street looks like, so that would be the process that is, you know, addresses what you said when you first called, which is our neighborhood is got nice homes, but the market's been slow, so now it's being, these homes are being picked up by people who can afford them to be just simply an Airbnb, not be a home. And your neighborhood is desirable for that. And so that's just kind of this new issue that is very particular to our community, so.
I just want to comment that what we wanted to ask Mike is, given the ways that you can deny an IUP, is too many Airbnbs on a block a legitimate reason that they could legally deny the Airbnb? So
Yep.
that's some legal research that needs to be done.
Yep.
Just to make sure, yeah.
But if we want to entertain a moratorium while that work is done, it prevents this next little,
So-
you know.
Yeah, I would agree 100%, that should be looked at.
And then I have one more comment of them.
yeah, and then just, I mean, I've even had people come at me from, even other aspects, like I had a local plumber come up and he's like, you know, it's a joke, because anytime we do something other than residential, if it's business or anything, we have to put in a certain septic system for them due to the amount of, people that are located in that house. And he's like, all these Airbnbs were in there constantly replacing their entire system because they're not having a 4 to 6 person family. They got 10, 12 people coming in on a weekend, and he's like, their systems are going out constantly, and we're in there strong from home. He's like, they technically should have to be zoned differently, which, again, that's not what I'm here about. I'm mainly trying to hear about the cluster, but people are coming to me with all these different issues. So, I mean, it isn't just myself and a
Yep.
couple of my neighbors.
Yes.
It
And
is-
up until kind of the awareness of the cluster that you guys have in your neighborhood, I've been pro, because what I'm seeing in my neighborhood is unique too. I'm seeing homes that are in need quite a bit of improvement. They're being picked up if somebody's got the means to do it, they're improving them, and sometimes they're going back into personal use. So somebody said, oh, I bought this for an Airbnb, but my real intention is to flip it. So it was a real short-term strategy for them. Now there's a young couple living there, so who's not gonna have to do all that improvement, probably doesn't have the resources to cash flow it. So it's very, it's interesting. I think it's very community specific. I'm sure Walker has some of the same reasons for doing it the way they do, but we can certainly entertain a motion for a moratorium. It gives us the time to do, as Caroline mentioned, the legal research and put it for planning. Planning has to be, willing to take on a process, but also to figure out what that process looks like in Walker or another comparable community. I don't really want to be looking at like large cities that have planning staff or, they have different strategies. for different reasons.
One more thing before we end, just to kind of, present the countering opinion as well. I did learn that Virgos are often used in the case where there is little demand for the house
Yes.
you're trying to sell, and we know that there's homes on the market right now that maybe need a lot of work and aren't selling. So I would be personally in favor of addressing the clustering effect versus not recognizing the benefit they have to opening up redevelopment possibilities in the economic development, because the city would much rather have it not stay, not be vacant and then get put into good use. But I am definitely in favor of the clustering issue, so I just wanna do it in an easy way, so if the IUP is the easiest way to do that, I'd be in favor of it. Didn't know if we'd be drawing maps and measuring 1,400 feet, I thought we could do it.
That's easy.
Yeah,
Yeah, we have zoning districts already, so you basically start there.
yeah.
You know, what are those regulations in R1, R2? Traditional downtown, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think. It's probably pretty doable.
Yeah, I think we have come one process, I don't know if we want to do a different one for R2 versus.
And then-
R1, but yeah.
For the moratorium, if that's approved, are we just, we're
How did you
not
handle-
getting that?
How did you
or-
handle the solar moratorium while you guys worked on that?
We just started a solar moratorium.
Okay, and if somebody.
Yeah, I mean, cause otherwise there was gonna be, who knows how many, but we needed to figure out some of the process.
I guess
side.
if someone tries to register it and say, no, there's a moratorium, but I definitely wanna inform realtors in town because.
That's fine.
I don't know,
Doesn't
Jessica, if you have, I know you're aware of a home trying to be sold and,
Yeah.
that's, yeah.
And that, I guess we should be clear in our communication, it's a moratorium as council and planning, come up with the process that we're gonna move forward, because saying you don't want it in your community isn't a good thing for your community. I think that's not the headline we want. The headline is we're working on how to make this work.
Yeah, and some of this, our process might be better, it might be
Might
work.
be easier.
It's
might be
just
better.
what we need to look at is if our process works great, then maybe the clustering issue is the thing we have to back.
Yeah.
But.
And
I
this
think
is
we will.
this is a clerk question, well, the way it was noticed was just kind of as a discussion item and guidance, not necessarily that we'd be voting on a moratorium, did we need to notice it that way?
I thought we had to wait for the vote and put it as an agenda item.
Should be an agenda,
Can't
item,
be
because we also talk about what's the punitive damage if someone
Doesn't comply.
doesn't comply.
So that can happen toward August, and planning can take a look at it. I mean, at least think about, the issue, maybe have some thoughts for us for August as well.
And I can ask Mike Flaherty the punitive damages of opening up an Airbnb while there's a moratorium. Okay,
Well, I would also like to know, if we wanna change our process, what happens to the existing ones? Are we gonna require them all to go through an IUP?
Well, I think so, but I think there's, like I said, I think it.
But what is it gonna be, first come, first served, because eventually the clustering thing on Skyline, we're gonna have to get rid of two
I
of them.
think you gotta have some kind of grandfather.
Yeah, that's what
system.
that's what I would like to know before everyone starts, so, but yeah, I think next month is fine, I think we can discuss it.
so in the moratorium, we wanna address the penalties. And what's Mike's recommendation on if you're gonna make everyone go get an IUP that has the rental or not? Okay.
Or just, yeah, they're.
Well, that'd have to be addressed in the ordinance or whatever text we write. But yeah, I would recommend we let Mike Flaherty run what needs to happen for moratorium. If that has to be a hearing or a discussion for your August, we'll put together the paperwork with Mike on how to start a moratorium.
Sounds good. No, this is very helpful, the kind of the variety of strategies other communities have worked with, so thank you, Christy.
What?
Any further questions for Christy until we talk about it again or not?
No.
And just for clarity, we're putting porta potty on the next agenda as well.
Well, I thought that was for discussion on the
Do you-
budget for next year.
Yeah, Dean was gonna make a motion today, but wasn't there for action, wasn't noticed for action. So, yeah. Just lost it. Agenda got too tired. Okay.
Thanks for hanging in there.
Yes, I appreciate you guys.
Thanks.
Hey,
Alright, now, the nuisance ordinance, first read, but you wanted to address the junkyard motor storage ordinance
Are
first?
you, all mentally ready for this or?
I mean, it's not that much to show three of that.
The nuisance ordinance,
Yeah.
there's a couple items that we need to
Yeah, there's
discuss.
some, okay.
You wanna just handle that one separately, adopt the nuisance ordinance and then separately?
I have them together in the PowerPoint.
Okay, you do, however you want us to hear, it. We'll be good listeners.
All right,
Hey, Joe.
all right. I promise I won't put everyone to sleep, but. So I'm gonna try to be brief. So the big changes is just, our old ordinance didn't say clearly that a junkyard wasn't allowed in the city, so if the new one. Definitely is gonna, clear the air, I'm just gonna. Share my screen for the. Christie, oh. Shoot, are you guys seeing this presentation? Okay. And then, so how this would apply to some of the ones in front of us. Is that if you have outdoor sales, you have to screen that, from all public views. Unless, from adjacent residential uses unless approved in writing by the city. So that's where if this was adopted in the case we were discussing today. We'd have something in writing of a number of items that would be allowed to store outdoors. The exception is gonna be automobile sales, boat and recreational, but they would only. They wouldn't have to screen the main road, cause the understanding if you're selling cars, you want people to see your product as you drive by. And so one of my concerns was, as we had it written. Businesses already doing outdoor sales won't need an interim use permit, but they would have to start screening their items. So this would mean that Lance would have to screen and the other outdoor sales is Paul Bush Auto. So we would have to let Paul Bush Auto know that we expect now screening. From the homes here and the home here, if we adopt the ordinance as written. The way someone was grandfathered in was recommended. By Mike Flaherty, we discussed, we could say you didn't have to start screening unless you have a nuisance, but if you have a nuisance, we'd be kind of addressing it for the nuisance anyways. But I just wanted to make people aware is if we adopted this as is, we would have to reach out to Paul Bush Auto about new screening requirements.
I'm sorry, I misheard you. Did you not say that an exception is cars, boats?
So they don't have to screen from Main Street, and this is why I pulled up this example, so you can see how in practice it's gonna work. But they would have to screen from this road and this road here on this side, because that's not a main arterial. Bailey's the main arterial and so is Main, but not. Okay, so just kind of wanting feedback on that, we wanna go tell Paul Bush Auto, hey, you're gonna have to screen.
Mayor, if I could interject, the junkyard or the outdoor storage really has two veins. First is there's outdoor sales, which is the Paul Bush Auto, which is a giant auto dealership built to be seen from roadways.
Right.
And that has to be managed so that the residential pieces next to them don't have to visually see it all the time. And the second major vein of outdoor storage is actually Gherkins and and the Ace Hardware store. So those folks kind of have incidental stuff outside, but a major office inside. And so our ordinance really tried to look at those two uses specifically and how would this ordinance reflect them differently. So with that, Caroline, you can keep going.
And Ace Hardware could store 5% of their product outside with no extra stuff, but not theoretically more than 5% of their product. Could be stored outside under the new ordinance, so that's a good point, thank you, Christy. And then for residential districts. This also says that any homeowner can't be storing any materials and equipment unless it's laundry, firewood, agricultural equipment, construction and landscaping materials if you're using it. or off-street parking of vehicles of being, and the exception is you could store off-street parking of vehicles if you're using them on the property, so. But other than those items, you couldn't be storing equipment and materials on your single family home.
So that's a big one for Wabasha. That's recreational vehicles would not be permitted unless they're in a facility, unless they're in a structure.
I'm understanding that if you're using your recreational vehicle, it's okay, it's a part of the exception list.
So license and operable.
Correct, yeah, just inoperable vehicles.
Permanently stores a boat next to their home.
Yeah, and if it's stored on the side yard and it's tidy, folks can have their boat stored there, just not in the front yard.
Any comments on the published auto screening requirement, and if we wanna carve out an exception or let them know?
I mean, I literally live next door. I think it's screened. I think it's screened right now with
Yeah.
vegetation. I don't know if that's Paul's.
I think
doing.
everybody should be grandfathered in, that's already currently operating how they are, in my opinion.
Okay, yeah, that was a change,
I think everybody,
that would include Mr. Bennett.
yeah,
Okay. All right, so I think on the second read, I think we could state that, right?
Would that include, this Grand Boulevard out there?
That's a whole other separate issue right now, yes.
I don't think that's a sale business, is it?
That's in the residential part.
Did they get an interim use permit or
No.
anything? Okay.
That's a whole other
So-
topic we're gonna have
If you
to.
go back to the residential slide, the only exceptions are the ones listed in that.
He's not currently operating, so he doesn't get grandfathered in.
When it says materials and equipment, that triggers to me a different image than your boats and wrecked vehicles, but then it's confusing because an exception is vehicles, so.
Yeah.
Just to simplify it, I'm thinking no outside storage and large amounts of materials and equipment,
And
yeah,
lawnmowers and, yeah.
That's just a
Building materials.
I mean, our discussion at planning, I would have to say the nuisance parking and storage section was probably the biggest debatable item. Because it was like, do you have 4 cars, are they in the front yard, side yard, backyard, can you have 8 cars in the backyard that don't work?
yeah, I've got
My
that.
opinion is no, but.
I've got that further on. This is this was the one on consent that I pulled. So if you want everyone grandfathered in, we need to change what it reads, because that was something Mike Flaherty added, so we'll pull that out for final discussion next time. But yes, I'm gonna just skip the nuisance. This is nothing we're worried about, blah, 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 nuisance code updates, weeds, fumes, offensive trades, gambling, prostitution. But the next thing I wanted to draw your attention to was nuisance storage and parking. So first of all, it lays out like a general, if you meet these 5 criteria, and it's, even if it's not listed in our specific thing, we could declare it a nuisance parking and storage. So it just says, if you have large amounts of materials that create visual clutter, we could declare it nuisance parking and storage. So that wasn't controversial. It just is a general statement to say, hey, if it's too much stuff, we could declare it a nuisance. And then the second part though is what's up for the debate. So I just wanted to point out that the original League of Minnesota Cities text said that you couldn't place ice fishing houses, skateboard ramps, playhouses, or non-permanent structures outside for more than 24 hours in your front yard unless 100 feet back from the front property line. Then in our discussions, we added the term vehicles to that, and then changed it entirely. So the way it's currently in there is someone can't place or store or allow the placement or storage of vehicles or non-permanent structures, so all of it, outside continuously for more than 7 days. In the front yard, so that has been added as well. So I am interpreting vehicles broadly and assuming all these conditions would not be allowed, and then that's why staff is thinking that could be a little too much for Wabasha and would want it removed. I'm just gonna go to the next one and then we can flip back and forth. Then the next part is you can't store large amounts of lumber, steel, machinery in your front yard that's associated with your business. And then finally, a person must not cause, undertake, permit, or allow outside parking of storage in cars and trucks on residential property in the front yard that is not paved or on a gravel parking surface. And so there was some discussion, should that not just be the front yard, but front, side, or rear? And then, Mike Flaherty, in fact, and some planning commissions wanna say, like, and it can't be more than 4 cars in your front yard. So I just wanted to point out with the photos, under that one, different scenarios that wouldn't be allowed, and also ask the question, is an RV included as a car or truck, and are we allowing that to be parked in your front yard? Cause as I was saying, like, the one that Lance and I discuss all the time, you can get in that thing and drive it, so I would assume it's a truck, but the one in this picture parked in your front yard, you'd have to haul it, so I don't think it'd be a car or truck. So those are the 3 areas. Should this be deleted? There's no controversy on the outside storage of lumber, etc. And then, I think there was concern that a lot of people may wanna park their car in their front yard or truck. Yes,
To me, that's not an RV, that's a camper.
okay. Well, do you want our campers included as a car or a truck?
Their time is pretty good.
You know, so.
But if it's on a driveway, then it's fine. It's
Yeah,
just in the grass.
Could planning identify areas where people are parking on a front or side yard where there's no concrete or gravel, there isn't, and just.
But my mother-in-law has her camper behind her house.
Well,
Behind the
that, so
house, yeah, I was
in
wondering
front,
about front.
I can name one just down the street.
Okay, yeah,
I don't know if it's been fixed yet, but, so, yeah, I mean, that's.
I certainly see that side yards common, campers, RVs on
Yeah,
grass.
I mean,
side
yes,
yards.
I think that was our discussion, was like, well, at one point, if you do it nice and neat along your side of your house, that's not a nuisance to me. But if you park 5 cars or 4 cars and 2 of them are on the grass, during the summer months, I mean, we can talk about what we wanna do about winter months, but whatever. You know, that to me is a nuisance, especially if they aren't, even if they're operable, and I know, I can't remember where we talked about operable and insured.
It's
Because,
further down, but
yeah, I mean, it's,
where's that, I think I didn't make a slide for that, but right now. We understand from staff that to get licensed, you must show proof of insurance, so the licensing and operable would pretty much stay the same as it is. If it's licensed and operable, it doesn't count as a nuisance, but I'd actually have to pull that out of the memo, because I forgot to make a slide about that. So. What is the feedback on placement or storage of vehicles outside continuously for longer than 7 days in the front yard? Can that be removed and we just focus on the other ones? Okay. Okay, and then now to here, are we comfortable with saying you can't park cars and trucks in your front yard? And you wanna put a cap on the number? Well, if it has to be on concrete, I think there's only so many that would fit on a concrete
So one
surface.
thing we need to talk about there is, in the winter time, when there's snow, there's a lot of people park their cars on the boulevard, you know, that's a nuisance.
Now, just one point of clarification, these 4 cars, they're licensed? They're okay? It's just what they're not licensed, or is this all cars?
This would say, even if they're licensed,
Okay,
Brian,
Thank
you have 4 cars
Gotcha.
parked on your grass.
I think the point is, you just can't throw them into the front yard.
how many people are gonna have 4 cars
There's a number.
in the grass, all in the grass?
I know there's one on Jefferson that hasn't been, it's been addressed, it's been in county with the county attorney forever. So I don't know, yeah. I don't think it happens like there's 80 of them,
Yeah.
but there are
I don't
probably.
reckon it'd be anything. That all kind.
4 cars.
Well, even if it shouldn't be before, but I mean, you could debate the number, like I say, you could debate the length they're on.
Yeah, I just think you gotta try really hard to get 4 cars in the grass in your front yard.
Well, this would be 4 cars probably on the front yard. Does that front yard include the driveway or is it just grass?
I think it's just the grass.
That's the point I think we're trying to clarify.
Right now, the way it's written, you couldn't put any of your cars on your grass. If you add, and then in addition to it, if you wanna say, and no more than 8 cars parked at all.
So getting back to my thing about
The snow.
them parking on the
Pull over.
grass, or winter grass, the snow removal, is that?
You could add the, for no longer than 7 days things to cover that, you could say
Or less than 7 days.
less than 7 days, you can't have any. Cars or trucks on a residential property in the front yard. That is not paid for more than 7 days and add that.
72 hours.
Right.
For 72 hours.
So again, the time.
Snow emergency covered winter.
Yeah. I think
We
that,
obviously make exceptions if there's a tsunami, people couldn't move their cars, it's not like we're gonna run around.
I'm with you. Yeah, I agree. Some of the time frame is debatable. It's just, I think what they're getting at is we're
Well,
trying to
it's
figure.
like, state fair parking and university game parking, it very much makes sense for communities where you're gonna definitely put as many cars as you can fit on your grass, whereas we don't see that very often. But it happens.
I like adding for more than 72 hours or 7 days or something, and then if it's a special one-time event where friends are coming for the grad party. You wouldn't wanna say, oh, everyone's coming for the grad party, it needs to park on the grass, I guess.
I like 72 hours.
Okay? Christie, do you guys want us to go over the licensing process? I know we're tired, so I didn't do a slide on that. It would read how it does today. If it's operable license and tab, it can't be declared a nuisance. We talked about insured, but then we were told you need to be insured to get licensed, so we thought that was duplicative.
It's just extra language, so I don't think you need it.
Okay, and then the other thing is, you gotta remove your snow and ice, don't have uncovered wells, don't have barbed wire, structures hanging over the sidewalk, there is some noise. So theoretically, if you did have a loud Airbnb, you could contact the police, but I know people rarely don't. We are gonna add under the permitted, construction activities, no construction activities after 10 PM or before 6 AM, but we are gonna add something about receiving authorization from the city, cause I just remembered when we did the water sewer replacement, we had to do it in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
And then lights could be declared a nuisance if you've got lighting that's shining in your neighbor's yard or it's too bright, could be also declared a nuisance, so.
So,
Well,
question, go ahead.
go ahead.
Oh, question then. So. The trailer court on 7th Street, those trailers, they're boarded up, they're considered a nuisance?
We have something about that if it doesn't meet the deterioration of buildings is basically just a general statement, and I even maybe forgot to put it in there, that if it doesn't meet building code, it could be declared a nuisance, and we kind of have to call in our inspector, cause none of us are trained in building code. But, that's how a boarded up trailer would probably be taken off, if we're just saying it just is in deteriorating condition. We probably have to see if it meets building code.
Isn't there something about like vermin and there'd be another?
There's vermin and stuff.
Yeah, guys, that's actually pretty standard. That's all covered in the ordinance, yeah.
It's probably that I haven't gotten a complaint on it, so it's a complaint-based process, Chief. So,
Right. I would say, guys, as another helicopter view statement here, guys, the city isn't gonna actively go after properties that may or may not have 4 or 3.5 cars, or is an RV or a camper gonna offend? These are just, when nuisances are called in, this is a method that will help the city and help our poor attorney manage that in the spirit of what we're trying to accomplish. You know what I mean? So this was drafted from the model ordinance from the League of Minnesota Cities. It's probably
Yeah.
been adopted by hundreds of municipalities across the state. So we're not gonna go after folks. We do wanna make sure that some of this stuff is reflective of what you guys specifically don't think that won't be a problem, because you could have a vindictive neighbor that says, well, there's 5 cars, go out and make them take it away, and you don't wanna end up being Big Brother that way. But largely, these are intended to provide you with the reasons for a nuisance, not to go tackle people.
So one thing I did not see in there was sidewalks. I know we have a sidewalk policy, but, why do we not have sidewalks?
Like a deteriorated
Yeah.
sidewalk.
Yeah.
Is that somewhere else, Christie?
Well, it's in the sidewalk policy, but that's hardly ever followed. It's never been followed.
Yeah,
So why
we
not-
replaced a
Yeah.
bunch, like 10, 15 years ago. We went around and did them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's in 5 different parts of your city code.
So why not just put it in